Now, yeah, we're live now. Okay, cool. Kat, Canada, welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight for this impromptu thing. We were in Spaces yesterday and decided to do this. Um, I guess it's not actually live, so it's a recorded thing. But I haven't heard the debate. Have you heard the debate yet?
No, I haven't. I was busy with my kids and with a workout, so I actually haven't.
Right, exactly. I don't know why they're doing this in the middle of the day because most times debates are prime time. That's when debates go, and that's when people are paying attention. We're gonna have Alex in here in a minute. He's running a little bit behind, and we'll get into this. But I did a video on the election this morning. I've been, I haven't really done a lot of coverage on the BC election because there's so much going on federally, but there's actually a lot to be said about what's happening here in British Columbia. It's crazy because, it's essentially a cesspool anymore. Especially when you get into the cities. You've been covering this a ton because, you went out, and got your free crack pipe, just the other week. Tell me about that. How did that go? Where was that even?
Okay, so I saw a video of a woman in front of the Nanaimo hospital, basically doing the same thing, and I wanted to go check it out for myself for work, and so I just went to the Nanaimo hospital, and sure enough, there's a vending machine that is literally just at the push of a button will give you a crack pipe, a glass stem. I don't even know what that's used for. I have no idea since I'm not a user. All kinds of materials educating you on how to use the paraphernalia that's free for anyone. And, you know, if people saw the video, they'll see that there's no vetting, there's no ID checking, there's no one there like asking you any questions. Are you of age? Anything like that. It's just the only time they're concerned is when I pulled out my phone to film and they said, well, you're gonna make the other people who might need a crack pipe feel some stigma. And I was like, oh, okay. All
Because we
right.
wouldn't want a stigma
No.
on illicit substance use in public. Yeah, that's where we're at today. That really is where we're at. It's crazy. So British Columbia, it started off as an experiment. Hey, let's give people a safe place to do the illicit substances that they've gotten themselves into. This was supposed to be a way of habilitating people, but now it's become the gateway into these habits. It's become the government supplying this stuff, but they're not supplying what the hardened drug users use. They're supplying what they can then sell on the street so that those things will get diverted into high schools, things like that, to create the next generation of opiate users, and then uh, get a couple of bucks for the actual users so that they can go and buy the hard stuff that's largely coming in from China.
Just imagine like any teenager who is rebelling against parents, even if they're in a, well-to-do family who, are just like not willing to do it mom and dad's way, can just go down to the hospital and get themselves drug paraphernalia. Like that's mind-boggling. And we're paying for it. Like EB set this up so that anyone can come and get it for free. But obviously, if you have half a brain cell, you know that nothing is free. We're funding this. And, I think they backed out after some of those videos have gone kind of viral. And I think they're repealing this whole thing. But it's just, I can't believe it got this far. And I don't know if you've heard the tragic case of the 13-year-old who literally died in a homeless camp of drug overdose. She was 13.
What is a 13-year-old doing in a homeless camp? I mean,
And
really, what
addicted to
happened there?
illicit drugs. Like, how does that even happen? And I think her parents were pleading with the hospital for her to have treatment of some kind, and they received no answers, and it ended in her tragic loss of life. It's mind-boggling. It's sickening that this is enabled by our province and this socialist premier. Like, I have no words. It's just, I'm stunned to even think that they think it's a good idea to make this so accessible for our youth in BC. It's just crazy to me.
Oh, and that's exactly what it is. It's just become accessible to the youth. What was supposed to be for, again, like I said, this was essentially set aside for hardened drug users. These are people that are already out on the street, already lost everything because of addiction. But that's not even what this is going for. The safe supply, as it turns out, is not even something that they're even eager to use, because it doesn't satiate the same thing that the illicit substances will do. The only thing it's been doing is satiating the pharmaceutical companies with their large appetite for money. Because, well, as we know, years ago I think it was it Purdue that got sued over the opioid epidemic because of their oxycodone that they had put out, and they were peddling through these pill mills and getting people hooked on that stuff. They got sued massively. And when that got all shut down, that was when the safe supply train came in. It was like, oh, well, we can't make our billions of dollars there. We got to make it somewhere else. So let's get more people hooked on this stuff, and we'll just have it with a new form. And it's same old story. Same old story. The pharmaceutical companies, they're not making their money anymore. No, yeah, they will be. They will be. Just wait as they line up for the next thing, i.e. safe supply. Now, we're just waiting for Alex. He's having computer technical difficulties. He's texting me right now. I had to reboot my whole system. And then we'll get into this. We might have other people. We've got the Save BC group. Some people from there might pop in as we're going through this. But we'll get Alex, Amazing Zoltan, as he's known on Twitter. For those that don't know, he was the one who broke the story about the NDP being broke. Like double entendre there. The whole broke. He broke that. They're broke. And now it's national headlines. It's now national news that Jagmeet Singh is not vying for an election because he's got no money, which is crazy.
Shocker. A socialist ran out of other people's money. Shocker.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Completely. Yeah. Imagine my shock at that situation. But yeah, Jagmeet Singh has blown the coffers of the NDP. I blew it a long time ago. He's even got a budget for, just in this past quarter, $143,000 to keep his office open. Alex went down there to check on the office on the hours that it was supposed to be open. Doors shut, lights out. Nobody's answering the phone. And not only did they not answer even the service was out of date. It was completely out of date. They were calling it something that it isn't anymore. And yeah, we're in a situation where I'm concerned for the people who are watching the government right now in British Columbia, because for those that aren't in the know, the NDP, it goes across the board. It's not just a federal party; it's federal and conservative, or federal and provincial. So unlike the other parties, where the parties like the Conservative Party of British Columbia is not associated with Pierre Poilievre's party federally, the NDP, they do have associations with each other, and there may be a little bit of sharing of the books and things like that. So if you've been donating to the NDP provincially, that might be getting Jagmeet his next Rolex, because it's definitely not going to the budget of keeping the doors open at his campaign headquarters. That's for sure.
That's where my mind went immediately. How does he have that many Rolexes and all those $3,000 suits? And I know he claims it's family money or whatever the heck he claims, but I'm so skeptical of the socialists because I came from a socialist country and I know where the money went. It did not go to anything that they promised. It went into their pockets and into their own coffers. So I'm skeptical.
Well, it's crazy. It's crazy that we have to live, today we're telling the stories. People from Soviet bloc countries are telling the stories to Canadians. What do you think is happening? What do you think's happened? This is how they marched us into that before. You ran away from that. You got over to Canada to escape that, and we're being marched right back into it. Now, what are the similarities between what life was like for you growing up versus when you moved to Canada, and now how things are happening?
Well, the overarching theme is increased government control at every step, at every level. That's the biggest red flag, biggest alarm bell for me. Censorship would be another one. As you know, I think we have a barrage of censorship bills being shoved down our throats. I think there's four of them, as if I recall correctly, with the most egregious one being the one that's last I checked is in the second reading, which is Bill C-63, that could potentially, if it comes, if it becomes law, you could be convicted of thought crimes. For which you are not allowed to know who the accuser is, and you'd be on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars to the secret victim and to the government. Like, it's insane. And when people online tell me, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist," and they're in such denial about what's going on in Canada, it boggles my mind, because how have Westerners have not been educated enough to know, to recognize the warning signs right away, and understand that censorship has never been on the right side of history, like, ever. We know about George Orwell. We know about, his 1984 novel, his Animal Farm novel. We know about all these stories, and yet somehow people can't seem to recognize it when it's staring at them directly in the face. So yeah, as I was saying, government control, censorship, uh, price control, centralized planning, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. During the lockdowns, we saw, empty shelves and just extreme tyrannical control of movement, um, you know, and all that egregious stuff that went on during that time. Churches being closed, that's another big one. Obviously, when the Marxists took over my former country, the first thing they did was destroy all the churches and execute all the intellectuals, like lawyers, doctors, etc. What did we see happening during the lockdowns? The doctors that spoke out, that were dissidents to the voices of the healthcare professionals, um, were being silenced. They were being canceled. They were being persecuted. They were shut down. It's crazy.
Yeah, and instead of actual executions, it's this cancel culture. This is what they've done. They persona non grata people, and then that's it. Your career's over. Everything you ever had is gone. Your way of making a living. I mean, it's on par with what happened in your home country. It's on par with what happened during the Cultural Revolution with the Red Guard in China. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what's happening in our country as we see, and this is why we're viewing these elections and we're watching this all go down. I've got one more person to bring into the chat for tonight. He's finally here. Welcome to the show, Alex
Hi,
Zoltan. Welcome.
everybody.
half
Sorry about
half
that.
in. I'll have to break this up into, there we go. We're in three pieces here. Welcome to the chat, my man.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hearing
I'm
you
looking
good.
forward to this. This is exciting.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I got people in the chat asking, "Did it already happen? What's going on?" No,
Yeah.
we haven't watched the debate yet, and we're going to get into that. It's not extremely long. It's I believe it's only 48 minutes long. But yeah, I mean we'll get into this. I don't know why they did it during the day. Usually debates are kind of a primetime thing because people want to watch it when they get off of work or after they've had dinner. So this is why we're doing it at this time, because this is prime time. Forget global news. I guess they dropped the ball on that one, and we're taking the slot. That's what's happening. But yeah, a lot of people are concerned about what's happening here in British Columbia, and they want to know, well, what's the future of the province look like? Because a lot of people at this moment are leaving. I mean, this is the reality of the situation. People are taking off, and it's because, well, they can't even keep a roof over there. I mean, it's almost like the NDP at this point, where can't keep the lights on, as you pointed out recently, Alex.
Yeah, it's the whole province is kind of like that. It's an interesting situation for sure. Bit of a crisis point in BC, as I think it is in most of the country.
So I think this would be a good time to get this rolling. Kat's just jumped off her video. I think she's arguing with her daughter or something. I'm not
it's a
sure, but no, glad to see Kat
foreshadowing for
coming in.
the debate.
Foreshadowing, that's right.
Yeah.
So there may be some other people from the Save BC group coming in throughout the broadcast here. So welcome to those people. If you got that link, come on in, join us. Want to say hello to the chat, everybody out there that's tuned in. Great to have you. There's going to be some voices over on Twitter, people commenting, things like that. Get on over there, leave comments on there. Leave comments in the chat here. We'll get to some of those comments in a little bit here. But let's, without further ado, I don't know why YouTubers always say those words. Without further ado, I don't even know what that means. But without the ado stuff, let's get into this debate and see what was said in this.
All right, good morning to you. This is Mike Smith, and welcome to the BC Leaders Radio Debate in the 2024 British Columbia provincial election. We are honored here at CKNW to host this event today, and I'm happy to welcome the three-party leaders to the studio right now. David Eby, leader of the BC NDP, John Rustad, leader of the Conservative Party of BC, Sonia Furstenau, leader of the Green Party of BC. Welcome, leaders, and thank you, all three of you, for being here.
Good morning, Mike.
Appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning to all of you. Let me quickly go over the format that's been agreed to by the leaders here. I will ask a series of questions. I will direct each question to one leader who will then have 1 minute to respond. That will be followed by approximately 5 minutes of open debate on that topic. Your microphones will be turned on here to encourage debate. After that 5 minutes, we move on to a new question. It will be my job to ensure the debate is fair and equitable. And in that spirit, I encourage the leaders to keep their remarks concise, clear, and brief. And we encourage free-flowing debate during the hour. However, when necessary, I will intervene and recognize another leader to ensure fairness. With that, let's begin. The first question is for NDP leader David Eby on affordability and the cost of living. Life has become more expensive over the 7 years your party has been in power. Many are locked out of an unaffordable housing market.
Right
should
to
voters
it.
trust you to improve on this record? You have 1 minute.
Well, thanks, Mike. Yeah, it is challenging out there for families right now. They're facing high interest rates. They're facing the impact of global inflation. They're seeing at the grocery store.
Global, right.
You know, it's hard to imagine that the price of food would be a topic in the American presidential debate, but it is.
Thanks,
So for
Carbon
us,
Tax.
supporting families, it's about driving down costs wherever we can, whether it's around childcare.
Why would global
providing hundreds of
inflation
dollars in
impact
savings,
housing
car
prices?
insurance,
We don't
$500 in
import
savings,
homes.
rebates through hydro. That's not
Unreal.
enough. We have to do more. That's why we put forward a middle-class tax cut. $500 per taxpayer, about $1,000 for the average family. 90% of British Columbians will benefit right away, unlike Mr. Rustad's proposal, where they got to wait till 2029, collect all their mortgage documents and receipts from landlords in order to benefit from it. People need support right now, not in 2029. And that's what we're all about.
Okay, we have 5 minutes now for open
You just-
debate on this
all he did
topic.
was say,
And
"It's not my
the
fault."
Conservative leader, David Eby, mentioned you by name. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And there's no question affordability is the number one topic I hear about everywhere around the province. That's why we came out with the Rustad rebate. That's why our plan for common sense change is going to be there to be able to support families, plus cutting the carbon tax, saving on fuel, and the steps that we're taking on food and food production as well, and making sure food is available locally. David Eby and his government has had 33 different tax increases. And why suddenly now that he wants to do tax cuts? And it doesn't make sense to me. From my perspective, what we need to do is we need to get the red tape out of the way. We need to make sure people's lives have the lightest touch possible from government. We need to make sure that we provide the relief, and we make sure we get our economy going so that wages can improve.
Okay, Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau.
It's so fascinating to me that nobody wants to talk about what's driving unaffordability in this province.
That's fascinating. She got an
Financialized housing.
invite.
We have real estate investment trusts that have been buying up housing, using it to deliver profits to their shareholders. Fossil fuels accounting for 1/3 of inflation. These guys want to talk about the carbon tax. That's 1/3 of a percent of inflation, but they don't talk about the role that fossil fuels are playing in driving costs. And they want to attach our economy
Driving
more
costs up.
to this backwards looking fossil fuel industry. And then they don't talk about profiteering, the fact that companies have been taking tens of billions of dollars in profits in the last 4 years. And they want to sell you a tax cut. I love that David Eby wants to give you back the tax cut that he's taking away with the carbon rebates. So a family of four earning $42,000 gets $1,000 in a carbon rebate. David Eby says, oh, we're going to cancel that, but we'll give you a tax cut back. So I guess one out of one pocket and into the other.
David Eby.
That's not correct, Sonia. You know that the federal government has a carbon backstop for us, and we can't just get rid of the carbon tax. John Rustad knows that too. You know, I hear John talk about the Rustad rebate. It's the Rustad long wait for British Columbians, 2029 to see relief from John Rustad. For us, the relief is immediate. It's $1,000 for the average household. If you have a multi-generational household, then all of those taxpayers see that tax cut.
Every
that
election.
doesn't happen under his. You have to, in fact, the more you pay for rent, the more you pay for mortgage interest, the more money you get back, which means typically the people with the most money are getting the most back. Our rebate benefits 90% of British Columbians, and the Greens have not put forward support for families immediately.
So the one thing that David Eby is saying, and he's misleading once again, which is what weak leaders tend to do. The rebate, the Rustad rebate starts taking effect on 2026. I would actually love to have the whole thing come in, but we've had such fiscal mismanagement by David Eby running a $9 billion deficit that it's irresponsible to do that. We need to be able to scale this forward so that we can afford to do these things and make sure
hold on a
there's
second, John. Weren't you just promising a $3.5 billion spend on this? But you're making people wait until 2029. Don't they need the relief right now? Don't families need support immediately?
In 2026, the Rustad rebate starts kicking in and we'll scale up. And as for the carbon tax, it's 36 cents a liter that we will be saving.
I guess that'll give people time to collect their documents from their landlords and apply.
We'll give Sonia first now a chance here. Go ahead.
Absolutely typical framing in an election, which is we're going to give you $1,000 in your pocket, so vote for us. As opposed to we're going to make sure that the healthcare system's working. We're going to make sure that there's transit available. We're going to make sure your kids are going to school in schools that have enough teachers and EAs and supports for them. We're going to make sure that there's mental health available to people when they need it. But instead, every election we get, oh, here's $1,000 and then don't expect services to be there. I think what people want from government is for the services that government should be delivering to be delivered, not more privatization and corporatization of public services, not more corporatization of government, not more of the same of what we've had from both of these two parties. Let's remember, John Rustad was a cabinet minister in Christy Clark's government. They keep doing the same thing, election over election, and 4 years later, BC ends up in the same place of throwing their hands up in the air.
David Eby.
Well, there's lots I agree with Sonia about there. We need strong services in our province. Now is not the time to cut services. Now it's not the time to cut healthcare, John. We need to be supporting British Columbians. Now, hold on. We need to be supporting. We need to be supporting British Columbians with strong services across the province. That's a key part of our commitment to British Columbians, building schools and cities.
Okay, I'm going to pause this here because it doesn't seem like they're going with one question after another. It looks like they've got this format of, okay, well, I guess the candidates are going to be running the debate. Here we'll start with one question, and then it keeps going back and forth. The moderation is pretty haphazard, in my opinion. At any rate. So the first bit is, okay, well, it's a fiscal nightmare. That's what the first question was. It's a fiscal nightmare. People can't afford anything in British Columbia. David Eby's response is, not my fault, not my fault, not my fault. Other people did this. It's a global phenomenon. It's something before. It's not my fault. And then to add on top of that, the other guy, John Rustad, is going to come in with stuff that's going to be long way out. Now, Rustad is his thing is that he's going to push forward for immediately. You don't have to pay taxes on the first $1,500 of your paycheck every month. That sounds pretty immediate to me. I know that it sounds immediate when the NDP leader says, hey, well, I'm just going to cut you a check. Well, where does that come from? Where does that come from? You just printing that out of nowhere? You just taking out loans to do that? Exacerbating the whole situation that we're in currently. I like the idea of just getting a tax cut immediately. What do you guys say about this?
Yeah, it's frustrating when people don't understand that nothing's free. Like, oh, $1,000 comes into your account. Where does that come from? Where does it come from? So nothing's free. They're buying voters. They're basically bribing people. Select the orange box and you'll get $1,000. Meanwhile, the carbon tax is still around and the grocery prices are still insane. So it's all just nonsense. It'll be amazing when BC finally turns blue. I don't know if you guys saw the latest polls. BC is poised for a conservative majority. That hasn't happened in how many decades? Like 9?
We didn't
Has
even
it
have
ever
a
happened?
Conservative Party.
I think.
Yeah.
When was the last time we had a conservative premier? Do you guys know?
No,
know
I
if we
don't.
ever have.
I don't think it's ever been a thing.
Yeah. So maybe, yeah. Like I think I read that we did have one like in the early 1900s. I don't know. Someone fact check me, but yeah.
I guess this will be an historic. I always say annoys me when people say an historic. Sorry, I had to just throw that in there.
I like how the green lady just interjected with pure nonsense too. She goes, "Nobody here is talking about services like healthcare." Well, no, lady. Like the question didn't have anything to do with that.
No, it didn't. That's like, is this a
And if
free
you
for all?
about healthcare, how about the fact that nurses who refused the experimental thing can't work in BC? I have a friend, she's a nurse. She was a trained emergency nurse for a decade and a half. Then the province of BC spent $50,000 training her to be an ICU nurse. And because she didn't want to submit for a second time, because she kind of woke up about the whole thing, she was let go with just cause. And now she has to travel all the way to Eastern Canada for 6 weeks at a time, be away from her husband, away from her 3 sons, and work in a different province because she can't work in British Columbia. You want to talk about healthcare services? Bring back our nurses. That's
And
still
for something that's completely nonsensical. I mean, what would be the like? So the only way to appease the people so these nurses could go back to work is if they took an outdated shot that would inoculate them from an outdated disease that you can't catch anymore. Like at the end of the day, that's really what it is. It's over. Get over it. Get over this COVID crap. Cut all the mandates. Get rid of everything.
No, they love their masks. They don't want to get over it. I see people in N95 still. Just yesterday during the Senate question period, there was a lady, who was not very slim, wearing an N95. They're still terrified. They love their little
immunocompromised cat.
Mm.
Right.
There's a remedy for that. It's called exercise.
Yeah, there you go. Got a super chat from Jeremy Mills for $10. Says, Clyde, thanks for standing up for all of Canada. You can shout out my friend's Freedom channel. Please, Lies and Logic. He's a Frito fighter too. I guess that's a freedom fighter. Nice. All right. Big shout out to Lies and Logic. Get on over there. Give him a subscribe. That'd be great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. But yeah, I think you nailed it, Alex, with the nonsense coming from the watermelon party. I mean, watermelons, for people who don't know the analogy, they're green on the outside. You crack them open, you see commie red on the middle, and all throughout. It really is the Communist Party of Canada. Of course, they have other branches like the Liberals and the NDP, but they are the ones that are really, really out there with it. And out there, indeed, not even answering the question, getting into healthcare when that wasn't even part of the debate. I'm sure that'll come up at some point, and we can discuss that further. But you guys keen to keep going with this?
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely.
Cities like Surrey, where John didn't build a single school for the last 4 years he was in government, despite it being the fastest growing city in the province of British Columbia. Okay, we're not going to cut hospital projects. We're not going to cut healthcare, unlike John Rustad's proposal.
Do you want to respond to that?
Sure. So David Eby cannot defend his record. He can't defend the damage that he's doing in this province. He's coming out with nothing but lies. We're not cutting healthcare spending. We're increasing healthcare spending. But the reality is 72,500 people left this province last year. 1 in 3 people are thinking about leaving. 1 in 2 youth are thinking about leaving this province. And they're thinking about leaving because David Eby's
John, we're setting population growth records in British Columbia.
Policies that he's brought in this province. And the fact that it's unaffordable for people in BC.
Okay, thank you, leaders. We move on to the next question. Still with affordability.
Oh, sorry, that was the end of it at that point. But they ended.
Look at his expression.
Yeah, right. Too good. So, but record population growth. Do you think maybe that has anything to do with the record immigration that we're having in Canada? I mean,
Mass immigration.
mass immigration. The thing is, Canada is suffering from emigration, and that's like native Canadian emigration. It's the highest it's been in over 70 years, which is absolutely astonishing. And it's the worst kind of flow of people, because the people who are leaving, they're the people who have the wherewithal to leave. Right? We're talking about professionals. We're talking about entrepreneurs. We're talking about all the people that are going to be needed to jumpstart this economy, and we're chasing them out the door. I don't think this is a wise move whatsoever. David Lazowski, sorry, my bad, with the $5 super chat says, isn't there a certain amount already that is non-taxable? At least in Alberta, the first 21,000 of your income isn't taxable. Well, they're going to make it the first, eventually it's going to go up to the first $3,000 every month will be not taxable. So above and beyond that, obviously, I think will be.
David
will be
is right.
taxable.
So like in BC, for instance, your first 15,705, I believe you don't get taxed on annually. Your first 15,000.
Right, annually.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I wonder how that'll work with the rebates. And it's not really even it's just a tax cut, is it not? Or is he saying that you'll have to rebate on that? I mean, I wonder what kind of truth there is to those claims there. I don't know. Anyway, we'll get back into this and see what they say.
And this question is to Green Party leader Sonia Fursten. Now, you are the only leader here today who's promised to keep a consumer carbon tax in place to fight climate change. Touched on this briefly already. Your opponents are backing away from this tax. Why keep this tax in place when life has become so unaffordable for so many? You have 1 minute here.
Yeah, so the tax, if applied well, puts the tax on the cost of pollution and returns that to people. Right now, a family of four gets, if they're making less than $42,000, gets $1,000 a year back. That's the way it should work. What the NDP have done in the last 7 years is tinkered with it so much that the biggest polluters get the biggest break on the carbon taxing. 65% of their emissions they don't have to pay for off the top. So we need to make the tax fair, which makes the rebates quite a bit bigger. But nothing is more expensive than ignoring climate change. Just look at 2021. The cost of the atmospheric river, the heat dome, the fires, $17 billion to our economy, billions of dollars to rebuild the infrastructure, billions of dollars of lost revenues for people, the cost to farmers. Ignoring climate change and continuing to tie ourselves to the fossil fuel industry is incredibly expensive.
Okay, open debate now. John Rustad.
Thank you very much. And one of the things that I do
So-
recognize in British Columbia is we do have a crisis, and it is.
Well, we'll let them
affordable
answer, and then we'll go
Sure,
cover
sure.
this
That's why we
question.
need to do everything we can to make energy as affordable as possible in British Columbia. Removing the carbon tax alone, along with the low fuel carbon emission standards, according to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, will be about 35.5 cents savings per liter for people. That is real savings. When a mom is taking a child to a soccer, when a family is going to pick up groceries, as people going back and forth work, that is day-to-day savings that are needed in this province to help make life affordable.
David Eby.
Sure. I mean, John says he cares about affordability for people. But the one thing that's in his control, the tax cut that he's proposing, the Rustad long wait, you have to wait years to access it. And you have to gather you have to actually be personally paying the rent or paying interest on a mortgage to benefit from it. Our tax rebate for people, our tax cut year after year, $1,000 for the average household, available for 90% of British Columbians. This is something we can do right now to support families, not down the road, not if the federal government does this or that, not in 2029, right now, because people need support.
Isn't that his
right
plan?
now.
We want
say
to
to
make
that?
energy affordable, Mike, in this province. You know what we do? We scale up clean energy. We scale up solar, wind, geothermal. And then we find ourselves in the position that California and Texas find themselves in, where they have so much clean energy that there's negative billing on people's energy bills. Boondoggles like Site C, going to make energy more expensive. And also subsidizing and tying ourselves to the LNG market is going to make energy more
You know,
expensive for British Columbians. Every jurisdiction that exports LNG sees domestic energy prices go up. These guys are all in on subsidizing an industry that needs billions in taxpayer subsidies to keep itself going, and they are failing to actually get our clean energy economy going, which would make energy more affordable, would make jobs more sustainable, which would make our communities more resilient.
John Rustad.
So it's clear in my mind, and one of the reasons why David Eby doesn't talk about the fact that what he talked about with a carbon tax. First of all, he spent several years defending the carbon tax and attacking any suggestion that we should remove it. And then what he wants to do is increase it for truckers and farmers and industry
John, that's not
as
true.
part of it. And that
That's
is
not
what
true.
his plan is in terms of how
It's
he's
not
going to
true.
make up the revenue. What we will be doing in the very first budget, you will see, is the elimination of both the carbon tax and the low carbon fuel emission standard. And we'll have that scheduled in a way that the federal government does not have an opportunity to bring in their tax, so that people see that real relief that they need in British Columbia.
Give David Eby a chance to respond. What would you do with that carbon tax then?
Well, the reality is that Saskatchewan tried to do that, and they had their money seized from the federal government. They had to go to court. Like, you can't. There's a federal law. But John, here's a big challenge in the room. We should talk about it. I think climate change is real. John Rustad thinks climate science is a hoax. He said,
Oh, here we go.
When you talk about protecting our communities from climate change, from
Here we
fire,
go.
from floods,
Real
supporting
tinfoil
farmers,
hat
when you
accusation.
talk about the industries of the future, which are low carbon, things like hydrogen. I agree with Sonia on many points around electricity. And so taking advantage of those opportunities, protecting our communities, recognizing that climate science is real, that the impacts on our communities will accelerate, that is a major piece
How
that
do you-
should be
Quick,
essential for
quick
anyone
response
who
from
wants to be
quick
the leader of
response from
British
John
Columbia.
Rustad, and then we have to
Quick
fit in a
response.
very short
First of
break.
all, the NDP have failed entirely in terms of meeting our energy needs
Oh,
going forward,
dodge. What a dodge, John.
which is why we're going to do that. The other thing is climate change is real.
Climate science,
Man
John.
is having an impact on our climate. There's no
Man.
question. Once again, David Eby refused to talk about his flip-flop on the carbon tax. I get that.
Climate
He's
science,
embarrassed
John,
about
it's a
it.
very
I get
straightforward
that.
question, just like you
But
told the
we
Globe and Mail.
need to make sure that we're looking after the real crisis and problems for people
Saying,
and
saying you
affordability.
think
funny,
climate
isn't it?
change
That's
is
what we will
real
be
and
focused on.
scaling up fossil fuel infrastructure is a circle I'd like to see squared
All
somehow.
right, leaders, let me jump in there as we take our first very short break here. This will just be a 90-second break. This is the BC Leaders Radio Debate on 980 CKNW.
Okay, so we've gone into our first break. Now, let's get into a few
So
of
much
those
to
things
say.
that are being.
So, first of all, the Green Party lady again, I know I'm kind of picking on her, but she throws out the bathwater with the baby when she says there's no greater cost than not tackling climate change. Well, if that's the case, why not make the carbon tax 100% at that point?
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, like if there's no greater cost, I mean, what kind of claim is this? And then David Eby, I got to pick on him a little as well. He says, "Oh, like I believe in climate science, dude. You're a personal injury lawyer. What does it matter? You're not a climate scientist. Like, your opinion on this does not legitimize the science."
And what about the actual climate scientists, for example, Alex Epstein, who
Right.
say that this dire picture that they're trying to paint, that we're all going to be underwater and burned alive in the next 9 years if we don't pay our climate taxes, and if we don't give the government control over literally everything in our lives, we're all going to be globally boiled. I'm sorry, but this prediction, this 10-year prediction, and the last 5 10-year predictions have failed. So why should we trust anything that these climate scientists say?
Well, and this
Absolutely.
idea that the consensus is out there and the science is in and it's been settled, well, that's not actually accurate. I mean, there's lots of people, respectable people like Dr. Patrick Moore. He's written the book, what's the name of his book? Fake Invisible Catastrophes and Threats
he
of
wrote
Doom.
Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout as well.
He was the founder of Greenpeace. It was amazing because they became ideologically driven politically. They were all socialists. And he's like, what is this? I didn't get involved in socialism. I got involved in environmentalism. And he's still an environmentalist, and he's in a real practical approach to it. And he looks at it, and he looks at it pragmatically, practically. And he says, there is no catastrophe. The sky isn't falling. There's none of this Chicken Little stuff. Let's look at some real issues, because we're actually destroying the environment in a lot of real ways, and we're not doing anything to fix that.
Well,
people like Bjorn Lomborg that are he's out there. He's saying, okay, well, he believes in climate change, but he doesn't believe that it's a catastrophe like they say it is. But what is a catastrophe is what we're doing economically. Because if we impoverish people around the world with these policies trying to stop the sky from falling and change the weather, we're going to make people very poor. And what do poor people do? Well, they don't care about the environment at all. They don't care about it. They care about their immediate surroundings and their immediate what's happening to them. And they'll, to hell with the environment, cut the trees down, burn the stuff. I want to be warm in the winter. And that's where it's been going. This is what's been happening in Germany. I mean, the writing's on the wall. The climate people are just out to lunch. It's time we get ecological about this.
Yeah.
Wasn't there also like a declaration by a whole bunch of scientists that I think there was like over 1,200 of them that signed it, that said all this climate alarmism is just ridiculous nonsense. Yes, the climate's changing. It's always been changing. The 1% whatever is not going to, make us all boil alive. If that was the case, if the 1% or degree rise in the waters, there will be no insurance available for the waterfront mansions that these people are building for themselves, because insurance companies would perceive it as a real threat, and they wouldn't be building waterfront properties. Like, that alone should be alarm bell enough for people to wake up that all this nonsense.
Absolutely.
It's just there. It's ridiculous, and it's
the other thing.
Is that lady a scientist? Is she a scientist with the scalable renewables, with the wind and solar? Does she care about the birds that those blades kill?
Well, it doesn't matter. She's the communist.
She keeps talking about scaling up BC's renewable energy. We're already 98% renewable. I mean, yeah. I don't even understand why we're having this debate in BC. I could understand having this debate in Saudi Arabia.
But you know what's a renewable resource?
Renewable. It's hydroelectric is their biggest energy source.
Well, but the thing is, every time you try to put a hydroelectric dam in, a new one, who are the people that are standing in front of it? The Greens, the Green Party.
They don't like nuclear. They don't like nuclear.
They don't like any of the nuclear.
Yeah, I know. I hate it.
But yeah, they're always the ones standing in the way of actual environmental things that would benefit us and benefit the environment. Absolutely. It's astonishing that they're the ones that are doing that. But of course, another natural resource that's great, and it's a carbon sequestering, that's logging. And they're the ones shutting that stuff down, and violently at that. They're the ones that are famous for going in and putting spikes in trees that do what? They maim people, whether they're falling trees on the site or they're milling the trees at a sawmill. This is violence. These guys are like, people like this are terrorists. It's crazy, but they have representation in our government apparently. At least they only get invited to the table. They don't really get much representation.
Weren't they also the people who were throwing burning pallets on train tracks? The eco-terrorists? Remember that?
Was that? I don't know. Well, I know they've done a number of things. I'm not your buddy guy for $10 says, the climate will change regardless of human existence. Always remember, these are rooted in Malthusian values. Affordable energy leads to growth and prosperity. You are the carbon they wish to reduce. Now, that makes a lot of sense. Malthus, for people who don't know, is this mathematician who came up with this idea that eventually we're going to just have too many people, and then that's it. We're all going to die because there'll be too many people on the planet. It's an absurd argument from a guy who should have known better, a mathematician. It never took place. As our population grows, we've done a lot of things to actually mitigate, disasters and things like that technologically. But now we're at a point where we're discovering that there's actually population decline, and population decline comes with, guess it, prosperity. The more prosperous we are, the less people we end up producing. It's just a phenomenon. And this is something that's hurting us really in the West, because we have so many people not reproducing or just having less than replacement rate birth, that the politicians are on this massive we need more people kick, well, largely because of the socialist programs that they have that they want to pay for into the future and not be left holding the bag when they're politicians. So they're opening up immigration because guess what? The third world and other countries are producing more people. But at the end of the day, if you look at India, as India is growing, they're looking out to 2050 and they're looking at population decline themselves. That's an interesting factor, and there may be pushes in the future to stop Indians from coming to Canada because they're losing their population. This is a real thing. I've been discussing this with Kushal Mehra quite a bit about this. I got one more super chat from David Lazowski. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it's not just David. Thanks for the $10 super chat. Check out Emissions Reductions Alberta. That is where the industrial carbon tax money goes. They use the money to de-risk projects, and it's been very successful. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. De-risking projects. That's
also I looked into it, and the Green Party leader also has no background in climate science whatsoever. She was a high school teacher.
Well, she's got a background in
yeah, she has a bachelor's in education, so
in socialism.
Yeah, exactly.
So she knows a thing or two about indoctrination.
I think one of her parents is from East Germany, so I don't think she would appreciate all of the communist tropes we're throwing at her. But
what are you talking about? If they're from East Germany, they must have loved it. oh, you mean they got out? Oh, okay. Don't bring it here. Don't bring it here, lady. Don't bring it here. G Meister with $5 super chat. They seem to be squeezing John for airtime. I thought the Green Party was going to be there just to serve coffee to the important people. That's harsh, but well deserved, in my opinion, my humble opinion at that. But I guess we could get back into this. We'll see where this is going. People in the comments are talking about the volume not being that high. Unfortunately, it's at the highest that I can make it. You guys are hearing it okay?
Yeah, I can hear it okay. It's a little quiet, but
okay. So yeah, unfortunately, that's as high as I can make it.
Okay, we return to the BC Leaders Radio debate on 980 CKNW. The next question is on healthcare. It is for John Rustad, the Conservative leader. You have proposed to increase the role of private healthcare, alarming supporters of public Medicare. Why do you think this would improve the system? And what do you say to people who are concerned about it? You've got 1 minute here.
Thanks very much, Mike. Healthcare is an incredibly important issue for people on the province. What we've seen from David Eby is closed ERs, 10 to 12-hour waits in ERs, people not being able to get services. It's been an absolute disaster. Close to 40% of our nurses are now administrators. What we need to be looking at is a different model. We have the second most expensive healthcare model in the top 30 countries in the world, and yet we have the second worst outcomes on many measures. This is why we need to change. We need to look at those models that are successful, the European models, which are universal healthcare, just like we have, delivered simply by government, but it's purchased by government and non-government agencies. And the most important thing is the funding follows the patient. We actually have David Eby, who argued in court, essentially saying that the system is more important than patient suffering. I couldn't disagree more. We need to have a healthcare system that is focused on delivering for patients.
David Eby.
Well, this is something that I don't understand, Mike. When the issue, not just in BC, but across Canada, many parts
Sounds like there's a lot that he doesn't
shortage of
understand.
Healthcare professionals. What John is proposing, families are, it's a stubborn problem getting the healthcare professionals we need, especially in rural areas. What he's proposing is that we introduce another layer of private companies to hire the same doctors and nurses, presumably at a higher salary, so that now we're paying more for the same health professionals. We need to train more professionals. We need to open that second medical school in Surrey, the one that John Rustad passed over. He had the chance to do it when he was government. He didn't do it. To train those professionals, to get the internationally trained doctors and nurses off the sidelines, to have the incentives in place so that they work across the province. I agree it's a stubborn problem, but we're addressing the family doctor issue. We've got more people connected to a family doctor, 250,000 more people in the province in the last year, and we're turning the corner on that. We can address these issues, but not by introducing a new layer of profit seeking on top. Just on your first sentence.
Two things. John doesn't like to talk about the privatization that's happened in provinces across Canada. In Alberta, we've seen total surgeries decrease since they brought in private surgeries. In Quebec, private surgeries are 2 times more expensive than public. And in Ontario, we have illegal and extra billing. But David doesn't want to talk about too much about privatization because we've seen corporatization of healthcare delivery in this province already. Look at TELUS Health. Look at the investigation that had to happen because the BC Greens kept bringing it up in the legislature. They were putting extra billing in front of service of delivery. But we have a higher per capita number of family doctors in BC than the rest of Canada. What we have are doctors not willing to work in a system that is way too heavy on bureaucracy and is not letting it be led by the experts, the healthcare professionals.
John Rustad.
I was talking with somebody from the Dean of UBC just a few weeks ago who said they could have an additional 100 people trained and David Eby and his government won't even talk to them. So there is a real problem here in this province, and it is a government that is not focused on what needs to be done.
John,
in this province.
we've
Our
added
healthcare model
a
in
lot of
British
spaces at
Columbia
UBC to
is
train new doctors,
broken.
including
It is
residents
in a crisis.
and a new
You
medical
go
school.
and
Talking
go
over.
to an ER room that is shut down, and you have to go 2 hours down the road when you have an emergency.
We proposed
When you have
a plan.
a pregnant
have a
mother
plan.
who has having to be diverted from a hospital in Surrey because they
Get out of
can't
here,
get those
Green.
services. I'm sorry. The system is broken, and we have to be brave enough to say we need to do something.
David Eby,
different.
your response. Go
It
ahead.
just it doesn't make any sense. There's a shortage of healthcare workers. John is proposing introducing private companies to hire the same healthcare workers. How does that? We've got to train up additional healthcare workers to make sure that people get the care they need when they go to the hospital. And John, my wife worked in the interior at hospitals where they stored materials in operating rooms that you closed when you were in government with your massive healthcare cuts. You've had 16 years in government cutting healthcare, and now you want to say, "Oh, don't worry, this time it's different." When you keep putting up numbers that show multi-billion-dollar cuts to the healthcare system, $4 billion in your
who isn't
healthcare
getting a
plan,
cut right
and
now?
$3 billion
I have to chuckle a
in
little bit.
$3
because the
billion.
last
Okay,
time-
quick
We tried to
response.
fix it.
Quick response from John Rustad. Then I want to go
Okay.
to Sonia
Last time
first.
the Conservatives were in power was 1927, so I'm not sure if David Eby was around back then.
Oh,
but
John,
regardless of that,
There's two of
what
us
I
here
wanna
running
look
against
at-
John Rustad's
what I wanna
record,
look
but
at
only
is
one of us is
Busting.
John
that
Rustad.
our system is broken and that we need those services, and there's only one way to do it.
Okay.
Look at the models that are working in the world and implement them
Okay,
here.
Sonia first now. Go ahead.
Okay, so the models at work are community health centers. We have a proposal for the Dogwood model, which would put community health centers in every part of BC. There's already about 30 of these operating in BC. They are really effective ways to deliver team-based healthcare. Teams of doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, social workers, psychologists. Let's add those to MSP, by the way. But the reality is that we have seen a bureaucracy get bigger and bigger under the NDP. And do you know who did get a raise? It was the Deputy Minister of Health, a 6.5% performance bonus in the last fiscal
Okay.
update. We have way too much executive and high bureaucratic costs in this province, and we have to focus on getting the delivery of
Thank you.
healthcare to people.
Thank you, leaders. We move on to another question on health.
Okay, before we go on to the next question, a little conjecture on this. So I want to talk about the stubborn problem. I know David Eby wants to talk about a stubborn problem. What happened to the stubborn problem about being stubborn about the vax mandates? It's how many years after the pandemic, BC was the last province to get rid of the mandates. They didn't get rid of the mandates. They just brought in a new form of mandates. And all those nurses that were fired are still sitting at home, or they're working out in Alberta or Saskatchewan, Manitoba. They're working in other provinces. They're not working in British Columbia. You cannot say that there's a stubborn problem of not enough workers when you're the one who fired them. And you're the one who's keeping them out of the healthcare services. It's absolutely insane. There's massive shortage of healthcare workers. That's also brought about by Bill 36 that the NDP brought in. Now, Bill 36, there's no C, sorry. Bill 36 amalgamated the colleges. It took about 30 some odd colleges that were run by peers in their fields, elected by the people who, doctors, physicians, whatever college each one was, the College of Dentists, the College of physicians, all these different colleges amalgamated down. And now the people who are heading them, the boards of these colleges, are no longer peers. They're government appointees, and they're bureaucrats that don't even necessarily have to be people in those fields. So this is crazy. This is what's wrong with our healthcare system. But then, you get the Greens that come in with this argument against privatization. Privatization is this, boogeyman word in my opinion. And I think it's a charged term because what it gives you is the idea that something ought not be in private hands, that the government is the only one who should be running an industry. And in Canada, the government has been running healthcare provincially for how long? We're at the bottom of the OECD when it comes to being able to do anything. We're at the top of the OECD of how much it costs. And you can't look at it and say, oh, well, we need to just keep it as business as usual, and this is a global phenomena kind of answer. It just doesn't cut it. We need something different. We would like other countries that have socialist models, we would like a private option. I think that would be a great way to do things and incentivize people, especially. I was talking to Corinne Maury. I'm sorry, I'm hogging the mic. I was talking to Corinne Maury, and she was talking about new nurses coming into the field. She said that when she went to school and she studied, there was a waiting list to get into school. Now they're always full. Anyone who applies can get in. And it used to be that they turned out 300 a year. This year they turned out, I think, like 30. It's crazy. Where it's massive. There's no incentive to get into that business. There's too much overhead. There's too much cost for the little you get paid and the amount of hours you end up working. And then at what cost you might just get banned from doing it because of a health decision. Anyway, I'll give the mic to you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't see private healthcare as a scary boogeyman word. Like, we have people from Canada that are traveling to the States to spend, like, the money that they can spend on surgeries like heart surgery. I know they have the best heart surgeons in the States. Like, for that, why can't Canada do that? Why can't we keep that money here if people can afford it? Like, and if it's an emergency. So privatization, in my mind, is not a scary thing. I believe it would, relieve some of the wait times from people waiting for surgeries in our free healthcare system. If people can take themselves out of the queue, why not? Like, why not keep them here instead of sending them over to wherever it is they're traveling to do it? I don't see that as a terrible thing.
Yep, good points all around. I think one of the other things that often goes unspoken about the vax mandates is that they didn't offer the nurses EI. Because if they had offered them EI, a lot of them would have just sat in waiting until the mandates were removed. But with no other source of income, a lot of people were forced to change professions. And a lot of nurses found that they could make as much money or more money being a server or, doing a million other jobs other than nursing. And so a lot of them have left the profession altogether and will probably never come back. So I think that was a really short-sighted decision with a lot of unintended consequences.
Absolutely agree. We got a couple of super chats in here. Let me try to find out my place here. Where were we? Chris for $5 says, what they want to do is go back to feudalism like it was after the fall of Rome. It won't work out the way they plan this time around in the 21st century. Well, I doubt it. I mean, we know what steak tastes like. When you have a taste of what it's like to live a free life, like this is why, if that was the plan, it would take generations. Slowly whittle people down and until they don't even remember what it was like to taste freedom. But yeah, as long as you know what steak tastes like, you're not going to want to go to the gruel or the bugs, as we were talking about last night in the spaces. Yeah, if you're not following us on Twitter, get over and follow all of us, because we've been doing these spaces and they're a lot of fun to get over in there and just yap, shoot the shit, as they would. Iron Creed for $5 says, why do we have people heading positions or leaders? They do not have any background or passion for it, which is beyond comprehension. Yeah, I mean, you were pointing out that the green leader is she's a teacher. That's it.
Yeah.
Remember the health minister during the lockdowns?
Yeah, Patty Hajdu.
Patty Hajdu, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Not as Hajdu.
She was a graphic designer.
Yeah.
They made her the health
no.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. The new health minister has mental health issues.
That's Mark Holland?
Yeah, Mark Holland.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, like, it's kind of funny and not funny, but yeah, no, he admittedly has mental health issues.
Oh
So,
boy.
well, I mean, who better to lead the health ministry?
I guess you got. Oh, that's absurd. That's hilarious. Holy cow.
We
Trish
learn by
Prue-
doing, you know.
Trish Prue with a $5 super chat says, "My cousin is a nurse who got fired because of no jab. Our healthcare is a mess. Absolutely is a mess. It's unreal. And what are we going to reelect the people who made that a thing?" I'm not your buddy guy for $10 says, "Healthcare can be broken down into a formula in which you can only have 2 of 3 or options: affordability, quality, and accessibility. You can't have all 3, and it's a tough balancing act." Yeah, that's for sure. But I think with the idea of competition, the other option that wasn't even thrown out there, and you see this in places like Germany or whatever, where they have a healthcare option. You can go with private, but if you go with the healthcare option and they can't take you in, but there's a neighboring state that has a private option or something like that, and you can get that done, the healthcare service has to pay for it. So it falls under the category of your socialized medicine that they'll pay for you to go to another place that will administer the treatment. That could be an option as well, instead of just waiting to die or being given the option of MAID, which is absolutely chilling to think that this is what's actually happening to people as they're on waiting lists. They're being offered MAID as an alternative. Christine Noseworthy, member for 9 months. Thanks for being a member for 9 months. Appreciate that. NP, huge announcement just made, Clyde. House has folded. What house has folded?
NP?
Northern Perspective, I'm guessing.
Huh.
The house is folded. I need to get some more context to that. If you can put that in there. I'm looking for.
Did you check the chat?
I'm looking at the chat right now. Effing awesome news. Yes, yes. Greg Fergus want all documents from STDC handed over to the RCMP.
Slush fund. Yeah.
Well, I don't get it. I'm not getting the context.
So as I understand it, I think what's happening is Fergus has said no more talk in the House of Commons until the documents that have been requested are provided on the SDTC.
Oh, okay. So the documents have been provided.
I think so. Well, this looks like an evolving story, Clyde. So don't take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. And Northern Perspective is a great channel to get into the deep dives, especially on these things and what's happening in these committees. They know the procedural stuff and everything that goes along with it. It's quite fantastic, the job they've been doing.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that might be what they were referring to.
Yeah, because my first thought was, what, on the confidence vote? Like, no way. I don't believe that for a second.
No. Who would ever be silly enough to not have confidence in this government?
Oh, that's great. Marilyn Haley's saying correct, Alex. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, it's the RCMP
I've never been more
investigation.
confident.
There you go. Oh, speaking of confidence and no confidence, let's get back into this debate. Let's see what's happening next.
Healthcare directed to David Eby, and many are concerned about the shortage of doctors and nurses, waiting lists for surgery and other services, hospital emergency rooms shutting down across the province. How do you plan to fix this? And you've consistently said that your opponent, John Rustad, plans to cut healthcare dramatically, which he has denied. David Eby, 1 minute.
Thanks, Mike. The key to this is that we have a shortage of healthcare professionals. We had to agree with the premiers across Canada that we wouldn't poach each other's healthcare workers. That's the situation across the country right now. People deserve high quality care no matter where they are in the province. And so training up those extra healthcare professionals, we're training 1,900 nurses, we're recruiting internationally doctors and nurses, we're getting them on track. We have a commitment around immediate provisional licenses for doctors across Canada. But here's the part that I don't understand. How do we recruit more doctors and nurses to this healthcare system? And John, I'm going to ask you this question. You have a candidate on the North Coast. His name is Chris Sankey. He's tweeting out that COVID vaccines cause AIDS. So do you agree with your candidates? Like, do you find that acceptable that your candidate would do that? How would you recruit? And I know, I just want to make sure that you know that this is a real thing. I'm going to pass you a copy of the tweet right there. And how do we recruit the doctors and nurses that we need? If you've got candidates out there that want to sit around the cabinet table, that want to represent their communities, they say that COVID vaccines cause AIDS.
Thank you. Open debate, John Rustad.
Thank you very much.
What?
Well, the first thing that we will do, of course, is make sure that
Brought
we get rid of
props.
the mandates and the silly restrictions that have been put in so we can actually hire back our healthcare workers.
There we go.
There are
already
about
done,
John.
10,000 healthcare workers, and it's not done. The mandates that have been brought in place by David Eby, the strict restrictions we brought in will not bring back the healthcare workers. We also, quite frankly, need to
Yeah,
get
new
rid of Bill
restrictions as
36,
well.
which is extremely draconian on healthcare workers and prevents them from being able to do the job and be the professionals that they're supposed to be. And when we're talking about utilizing our healthcare professionals, there are surgeons today that get 8 hours of surgery time a week. That's it, because that's all the system will allow. They could very easily be doing 20, 30, or 40 hours, and David Eby does not want to utilize those professionals. By changing the model, we're going to have better utilization of professionals, we're going to have better innovation, and we're going to make sure that we're focused on patients.
Okay, Sonia,
It's
first
really
now.
important to look behind what John is suggesting here when he says he wants to unleash the private sector into healthcare and make it a volume-based approach, which means that the doctors and the healthcare providers will be incentivized to spend less time per patient. We need a healthcare system that actually meets the needs of patients. And if we want to ensure that our acute care, our emergency care has the pressure removed from it, we've got to get a primary care system in place so that people know that they have longitudinal primary care with doctors and teams of healthcare providers who are taking care of them and their families, and that they're not finding out that they have stage 4 cancer when their first visit to a hospital is when they get that diagnosis.
Mike, look, the reality
Sonia's
here
making
is
some
the
good
reality
points
here is
here,
very
but hold on a
simple.
sec here,
Okay,
John.
let's say David Eby here, his turn. Go ahead.
I just wonder, John, about who's going to be running our healthcare system. Like, I think about my kid. If my kid gets sick, do I want to take them to a hospital that's run by a government where a cabinet minister thinks that COVID vaccines cause AIDS? So I just want to ask you again.
So
do
get
you
it
find
out of the government
acceptable
then.
that your candidate is promoting the view in the North that COVID vaccines cause AIDS?
So, Mike, your question was around doctors and wait lists and improving healthcare. And so I will
so
answer
is that
your
a-
question.
That
Well,
must
so
be
it's an
When you
open
look at-
debate. You can respond to
I
his
understand
question.
that, but when you're looking at it, and this is what David Eby does not understand, the models that are in Europe, Scandinavian countries, European countries, Switzerland,
You
Australia,
thought this was a
they're far
gotcha.
superior doing what I am suggesting. They're far superior to what we're doing. You've got a government
Will Chris
and
Sankey
David
sit
Eby,
around the
you've got a
cabinet table, John?
government,
Will he be the
and
health
you've got a
minister?
government
Will he
that
be on a health
is
committee?
arguing that his system is more important than patient suffering. I couldn't disagree more. We want to put a system in place from the European models that are far superior, that do much better than what we're doing here in British Columbia, and are focused on patients, making sure that the funding and
Okay.
support
There
follows the
couldn't be an
patient.
easier question, Mike. Do you
I'm
think
super
that COVID
excited.
And David
vaccines
Eby
cause
does
AIDS?
not
No,
want to
no,
talk
they
about
don't
the
cause AIDS.
disastrous
I don't
effects
agree with
of
that.
British
I don't
Columbia
support
and
that
his
candidate.
policies, the ER
know,
It's
cultures,
very
and the
straightforward.
fact that our healthcare system
Couldn't
is a
be
collapse.
easier.
He is trying to
Cameraman,
divert from
fix-
that, and I get that.
figure
but
out
you
what you're
can't
doing.
defend it, and that's what weak leadership does.
A quick final
it
word
is
to Sonia
actually
first,
really
and now we take
important
a
to
break.
ask the question about the people that are standing up to be representatives in our communities. Camille Curry, who's our candidate in Esquimalt Colwood, she led the charge on Everybody Deserves a Family Doctor. She got an award from Doctors of BC for the work she did on behalf of doctors and patients in this province. That's the kind of candidate that we're bringing forward. We're bringing forward serious people who have demonstrated that they can make change happen. There is a problem with the
Okay.
candidates in the Conservative slate.
Okay, at that point, leaders, we take another short break here, 90-second break, and then there will be more. This is the BC Leaders Radio Debate on 980 CKNW.
Okay, so that's
I
the
don't-
next. Oh,
I
that
don't
got
know
us into something. Holy cow.
I don't know if COVID vaccines cause AIDS, but I know that intravenous drug use causes AIDS,
Definitely.
leads to the increase of transmission of HIV.
Well,
So-
Carolina put in the chat, she says AIDS, acquired immune deficiency. Totally correct. I don't know so he just came in with a prop and a piece of paper and a statement saying that John Rustad claimed that that you get AIDS from the vaccine.
No, John, I
I've
think
never
so.
heard this statement. This is
Yeah.
some weird October surprise crap that just I don't think
Rustad should have
when-
just doubled down on it and said, "Yeah, that's going to be my health minister." Actually,
but
Thanks
well, it
for
was great.
ignoring the nonsense.
Well, it was crazy because he gave the argument that was John Rustad's argument. He says, "Do you want a minister who believes these things to be in charge of healthcare?" It's like, yeah, no, we would like to get healthcare away from the government and into private hands and people who are actually better at these things. That would be the way to do it, and get rid of the Bill 36 that put the colleges in the hands of government appointed bureaucrats instead of people who are peers in these professions. That's where it should be. Yeah, we shouldn't be listening to politicians that think wild and crazy things, because they should be able to think wild and crazy things, and you should be able to elect them. But people who are working in industries shouldn't be able to ignore wild and crazy things and just get on with their day and what they do for themselves professionally. That's exactly what it should be. There should be a lot more the healthcare should be a lot more between the patient and the provider, and a lot less of the government getting involved at all in that whole circumstance.
Especially given how wrong they were with pushing the mandates on people and ignoring like any relevant data that suggested that this was not safe nor effective. They all were so terrified to draw any attention to that because they wanted to mass jab everyone, and now we're in a whole lot of trouble over here after all of that. We've got,
Well, I mean, yeah, how many
mortality rates unexplained and like all these other things, and I don't want the government making decisions for myself. I don't want them involved in my health decisions. They always yammer on about how it should be between the patient and the doctor, especially when it comes to women's rights, but that they changed their tune so quickly when they wanted to impose the mandates on people. That flew out the window. The medical choice should be between the woman and her doctor went out the window completely when it was nurses who didn't want to submit to an experimental drug.
Well, I mean, how many lives were saved because you had to scan a barcode before you got your yogurt parfait from McDonald's? You know what I mean? Like, seriously, any of the measures that they put in place, realistically, did they save any lives? I don't think so. But they were draconian, and they were so heavy-handed, and they were enforced on everybody, and they wanted to hold on to them with every last little grip that they could with their, like Gollum with the ring. They did not want to let go of that power, and it took protests, it took the Freedom Convoy, it took all of this stuff for them to relinquish that power. And we're still fighting. We're still fighting in court. Bonnie Henry's being sued. The NDP are being sued over all of this stuff. Are they letting things go back to normal? No, they're not at all. So yeah, I'm gonna have to side with the guy who's got two people arguing against him, a third person being the moderator in this. And I actually see why the Green Party was invited to this now. It was to create this illusion of consensus against the conservative candidate. That's what it looks like to me. There's no reason at all that the NDP or the Green Party leader, the leader of one, is there even in the first place. They're not really a contender in this election.
The vote split for the conservatives. Well, it's good. I mean, you do have that never vote conservative crowd, right? So it's always
good you do
on the other side if you can. So
that's true.
Yeah, probably work in their favor, I would imagine.
But I think this is a what it's doing is it's creating this illusion that everybody's against John Rustad.
Yeah, I've changed my mind. I really like this green lady.
The expert in climate and medicine.
I think everybody should vote for her. Really turned around on her, actually. She made some great points.
Oh, that's way too funny. So we've got some more super chats here. Christine Noseworthy later said they won't let me talk in the chart. I think I'm guessing in the chat. Turns out, yeah, they've shut down Parliament. I guess that's what went on there. Chris with a $5 super chat says, I left Poland as a kid in the 1980s. Let Kat explain what socialism is. Look at Poland and Russia now after they adopted capitalism. Booming economies, and that's really what's happening. Kat was explaining earlier that it's tragic. And this is why so many people got away from these Soviet bloc countries. This is why people flee China. You don't have like this mass exodus of people from the free world going to communist countries. Like, how many people do you know that have recently moved to Venezuela? How many people do you know that are like, yeah, mainline China, that's the thing for me. I'm
There
gonna
was
go.
that one soldier that snuck into North Korea recently.
Yeah, right.
And then there was that guy who literally sailed on like a surfboard with a sail for 10 hours just to get from Cuba to America to escape
Yeah.
socialism.
Oh,
Little-
I mean, that's amazing. The ingenuity that some of these Cubans have just to get across that water. Like, they'll build boats and submarines and all kinds of things just to get out of a communist country. It's
Little known
amazing.
weird historical fact: Pierre Trudeau tried canoeing to Havana from Florida in the 1960s.
So he's one of the wackos that goes
Yeah,
the
he's
other
one of the
way.
wackos. Yeah, the Coast Guard had to turn him around. He would have drowned if they hadn't turned him around because it's very difficult to canoe to Havana.
What
So
a nut job.
we can blame the Coast Guard for all
Yeah,
of our
that's right,
problems.
for all of our Yeah, strange butterfly effect thing going on there for sure.
Christine Noseworthy says, I'm blocked from chat. I don't see you being blocked from chat. I see you in the chat. All the things that you've mentioned in the chat. I saw you earlier making mentions. That's really weird. Any mods that are in the chat, make sure that she's not being blocked or anything like that. But I saw a bunch of your chats. So yeah, if the moderators can just have a quick look at that, that would be great. Fantastic. Robert McFallon with $5 super chat. No discussion of any bill or legislation until the Liberals provide unrelated document requested by the PBO to the RCMP. Wow, that's quite something. There's going to be nothing, no discussion, nothing until that request, the documents are provided.
Yeah, I think for 3 months they've been requesting this, or rather, for 3 months it was being discussed, and for 3 months they refused. I think I remember seeing it being discussed in Parliament.
So now they're stalemated, I guess. That's crazy. Interesting.
The
See how that goes.
Liberals are trying to spin it as conservatives trying to violate charter rights.
Yeah, the
Nonsense.
irony.
Oh, of course. Yeah, violating charter rights.
Yeah.
They'll never live down the Emergencies Act. Oh, there's a protest outside of Ottawa, outside of Parliament. Okay, we need to suspend liberties nationwide.
Yeah, with the seriousness of an alien invasion.
Right? Like, unbelievable.
You're just responding to honking and bouncy castles.
And then when rockets fly into another country,
Right.
like our foreign minister says, absolutely no retaliation, no escalation, no rockets flying, do nothing. People want to refuse an experimental drug, shut it down. War Measures Act right now.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Yeah, it's just like Jagmeet Singh saying it'd be really nice to see calmer heads prevail in the Middle East. It's like, bro, you just tried to beat up 2 hippies in the alley like a week ago.
Didn't he say come at me, bro, to Pierre
Yeah.
Poilievre?
No, well, yeah, he did actually. Yeah, you're right, in the House, but he also challenged 2 hippies to a fight in the alley behind Parliament.
He did. Oh man, what a joke we are in this country. It's unbelievable. I'm not your buddy guy with another $10 super chat. Very generous tonight.
Oh, the contrarian take.
Yeah, he says, I'm glad the mandates happened. What? I'm glad the mandates happened? Not for the pain they caused, but in how it woke up so many people to realize Canada is right now. Yeah. Actually, that's not a bad take. That's not a bad take at all. I think that's wow. To think about if they didn't happen and we just kept going with the slow burn, people wouldn't be concerned about liberty. People wouldn't have liberty on their radar. They would just be like, how do I get more free stuff? And who do I vote for to get my free stuff? So I'm going to have to, I'm not your buddy guy, agree with you on that one right there. It takes a little bit of pain for us to actually see what we're up against and what we have to fight. Absolutely. And speaking of the beast, let's keep going with this debate.
Okay, we continue with the BC Leaders radio debate on 980 CKNW. We move on now to crime, public safety, mental illness, and the toxic drug crisis. And the question is to Conservative leader John Rustad. You have promised to shut down supervised drug consumption sites and stop decriminalization of drug possession. Your critics say that would only make the crisis worse. What do you say to them? You have 1 minute here.
So it's pretty clear in British Columbia that the addictions and overdose deaths is completely out of control. I was up in Campbell River not long ago, and there was a monument there with one blue flag planted in the ground for every boy and man who has lost their life to an addiction. 12,000 flags. And there are more being added every day. And that doesn't include the women who have also died from addictions. What is happening in British Columbia is clearly not working. We need a bold and brave plan, which is what the Conservatives will do, take a common sense approach to being able to deliver addiction and addiction treatment in British Columbia to bring this to an end. When I hear from a mom like Nikki, who for years tried to get a hold of NDP, tried to get a hold of her NDP MLAs and refused getting a response, and her son Christian died because he could not get the treatment, and she felt helpless because there was nothing she could do to help him. This has to change, and a Conservative government will change it.
Okay, we get a response from the NDP leader, David Eby.
Yeah, for Nikki, for all of the parents, for all of the people who have lost a loved one to the toxic drug crisis, absolutely. People need access to treatment. They need access to a way out of addiction that will kill them. And that's why we've opened hundreds of new addiction beds. We've got more work to do on this. And the thing that I struggle with is, John, this is a really serious crisis. Mm-hmm. How can it be that you say one thing to one group about it when you're in Richmond, talking to the Chinese community, say we're going to close all of the safe consumption sites. But then, when you're talking to someone in recovery who says, my life was saved 5 times, Guy, right? My life was saved 5 times by a safe consumption site, and I was able to get into recovery as a result. You say to him, well, we're not actually going to close them. We're just going to change the name. And then you send out Eleanor Sturko who says, well, we're not actually going to close them. So, people deserve better on this serious issue.
Do you want to clarify your position on it?
Sure. Look, very clearly, safe supply and decriminalization have failed people in this province. They do not work. They are getting drugs in the streets. That safe supply is making its way into our schools.
He's a dodging
experts
question again.
Are telling me that we have the highest level of addicts per capita anywhere in North America.
How do we not know your position on safe consumption sites, John?
And I can tell you something. What we are doing is we're going to turn anything like safe consumption sites into recovery intake sites.
So you're not
We're going to make
them.
sure that we are going to be linking people to the recovery that's needed, and we're going to end this nonsense that's happening in British Columbia.
Sonia, first now.
That overdose prevention sites are actually where people get attached to services. It is where they are getting attached to healthcare services, to social services.
Waiting 5 months to get services.
The challenge here that is being ignored is, like, John likes to talk about European countries, but he doesn't talk about the European countries that recognize from the evidence and the experts that a war on drugs is not going to get us. We could follow the path of Mexico or the UK. Wars on drugs, we know what they get us: bigger cartels, more organized crime. What we need is a war on poverty. What we need is to recognize that the socioeconomic conditions that are creating these outcomes are exacerbated by this highly toxic drug supply. We need grown-ups in the room. We had an all-party health committee that spent a year listening to experts, getting information from everything from police to health experts to people with lived experience. We presented a report to the government, consensus from all 3 parties on the path forward. And the number one recommendation was make sure that people's basic needs are being met. Look at a continuum of care from prevention all the way to treatment. And all John wants to talk about is the very furthest end. The most expensive thing to do is put people into involuntary care. Let's have a voluntary care system. Let's make sure people are getting help before they're in crisis. Let's make sure there's mental health help for students, for people. We have so much work to do, but the focus on the most severe end of this crisis is ignoring the whole continuum.
Okay, both of your opponents have expressed support for secure and voluntary care. Let me go to David Eby on that point. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Mike, British Columbians can see people struggling in our streets who they're not living a life that has any dignity. They're walking barefoot down the street, smashing windows. They're in visible distress. They're mentally ill and brain injured. We tried supportive housing. It didn't work. We tried something called complex care housing with intensive medical supports. They weren't successful. They were threatening staff, other people. In hospital, they're using drugs. We need something that works for
we
these
have a model
folks.
that works,
There
actually.
are a couple hundred of these folks across the province. They need that care. So that's why we're opening those facilities in Maple Ridge. We're providing support for people.
John Rosette.
So first of all, he's going to take hospital beds which desperately needed and turn them into, we need to be building
not correct, John.
additional capacity in this province. And this is also why I look at involuntary care from a perspective. If you're a parent and you have an 11-year-old child who is addicted, today, if that child does not want to go into treatment and recovery, there's nothing you can do as a parent. And I think that is wrong. We in British Columbia should be allowed parents to be able to do everything they can to help their child. That's why we are proposing compassionate and voluntary care. The opportunity for a parent to say, I want to do everything I can for my child. Let's make sure they get into treatment and recovery so that they can live full and productive lives in this province.
with that?
No, kids absolutely need support, and it's a challenging issue, right? Because if you have a kid,
So he doesn't agree.
John, don't pretend this issue is straightforward and simple. It's not. It's challenging. When you have a kid who's with another group of kids and someone appears to have an overdose, the decision about whether or not to call 911 for help might hinge on what they think the response is going to be.
Yeah.
And so,
and that's actually what the
considering the
evidence
gray
shows.
in this, considering the challenge around this is
for
important.
Nikki, whose son, Christian, who died of an overdose. In grade 9, the teachers knew he had an addiction problem and would not tell the parents. Would not inform the parents of this problem.
Well,
I think that's
absolutely
completely
should have told
wrong.
the
Let me thank you, leaders. We move on to the next question, which is to you, Sonia, first now, and it is on the
Okay, so that was the that was the question of that. Alex, you still with us? I know Kat, she had to go, so she said her adieu in the private chat here. So goodbye to everyone for Kat Canada, who is joining us, giving us some of her time. So thanks to Kat Canada for doing that. Okay, so this one was about the drug epidemic in Canada. Now, I have a few takeaways out of this one. Ebby has this story about a guy who says, you saved my life 5 times. My pushback on that is if your life has been saved 5 times, you were never saved. You were never saved at all. You were just prolonged. You were put into, you were enabled to keep doing these things. Saving your life would be getting you off and getting you off permanently. That, in my opinion, is not saving his life. The Green Party candidate brought up the idea of the war on poverty. There's, these are buzzwords. These are buzz terms.
Yeah.
Right? The war on drugs. Yeah, I'm not keen on the whole war on drugs. I don't think that was a great
thought
approach.
that nothing was higher than the cost of climate change. So why would we even talk about the war on poverty?
There you go. So there's an economic rule that if you subsidize something, you'll get more of it. And it
Sure.
goes across the board. You subsidize corn, you're going to get a surplus of corn. You get too much of it, you get an abundance of it. You subsidize poverty, and you're going to get more of it.
Well, you subsidize drugs, right? I mean, I actually don't think that there's I don't think there's a huge problem with the concept of safe injection sites. I think that they actually do save lives, but I think where we lost the plot was with the diversion programs, right? Just handing out dilaudid, handing out pharmaceutical grade heroin, right? And not expecting people to just divert that, and use it to purchase the same fentanyl that they were using before, right? All we did was just flood the system with more drugs. So I think that's kind of,
so I agree
a
and
little
disagree
radical
at the
and
same
extreme.
time. So I agree and disagree at the same time. So I'm a fan of safe injection sites as they were done in like the Netherlands, for example, where it was a private church. Private churches were allowed to. They made exceptions to the rules to allow them to do that because their incentive was to get people off drugs. That was it. And they would invite people in for dinner. They said, here's a place so you're not out in the streets and in the parks doing these drugs, and you can be here and we'll monitor you, but we'll get you off of them. And the first day you come in is your first day towards recovery. And that was their whole process. And anytime somebody would relapse or do something, or they had the right to shun them and tell them, get out of here, Jim. You're not coming back for another week. I don't want to see you here for a week. Right. And then that social ostracism was a great tool towards getting people off of the drugs. It'll always be a great tool for that. It all changes when the government runs it. When the government runs it, the addicts know that they have every right and they can go in there and they're the boss. They run the show. It's not the priest and the people in the community that are running the show. It's them that runs the show. And I think that's where things go wrong. So I agree with you on the safe injection sites if they're done in a private setting under supervision of a charity, that kind of thing. And I think that there should be allowances for that to occur. I just don't think the government should be running them, and that's the reason why I think so.
Yep, fair enough.
And then there was the talk about hospital beds, because hospital beds are going to be taken up in order to give these to addicts that are constantly doing these it's the binge cycle, right? For addicts, you go into a binge cycle, you get off it for a bit, you start to get clean, and then the drug dealers, they know what they're doing. And I've heard this from RCMP agents. They'll kill an addict. This is what they'll do. They'll do it on purpose, because what it'll do is it'll send this signal out into the streets that dealer's got the best stuff, and they'll wait until somebody's just starting to recover, and they'll give them an extra dose, send them right over the top, and it's crazy. It's disgusting. It's immoral, and it's the way things work in this industry, and that's what's happening right under our noses. But talking about the hospital beds, giving them to addicts, and that was a point of contention. One thing that didn't even get brought up, and this came out a number of years ago, actually, because of freedom of information. Do you remember when the COVID pandemic first started? It was all about, we don't have enough hospital beds. That was the reason why we all had to do what we were doing, locking down and all that stuff. There's not enough hospital beds for how many people are going to be taking up these hospital beds. And we all agreed that there should be more hospital beds. Well, Freedom of Information Act requests got the number of hospital beds year to year to year. And it turns out the NDP government made 0 new hospital beds in all of British Columbia. 0 new hospital beds before, during, or after the pandemic. So this is really where we're at with this. If you think that the healthcare system is not being managed right, well, you don't have to look further than who's in power right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting as well, just how governments never admit when they make a bad decision, because a lot of this is also the byproduct of deinstitutionalization. So when I hear the phrase complex care facilities, I mean, all they're really talking about doing is just reinstitutionalizing the people that they let out into the streets, which caused a lot of this chaos and carnage.
Oh, right,
for those people
right.
specifically as well.
Yeah, that's actually true. Absolutely. All right, let's get back into this, because there's still quite a bit to get through.
A similar topic on the drug crisis. You have promised to expand harm reduction services, including prescribing fentanyl for drug users. You've criticized your opponent's call for more involuntary secure care for people suffering from mental illness. How would you implement this plan while ensuring public safety, which is a key concern?
Not prescribing fentanyl. So regulated pharmaceutical alternatives to the incredibly toxic and dangerous drug
including
supply.
Fentanyl, though, right?
Well, diacetylmorphine is actually what we specifically.
There is a
about
trial with
in our
fentanyl.
platform, but let's be clear. Right now, there is a multi-billion-dollar illegal industry. Organized crime is operating in our streets, is distributing to people drugs that kill them, that is causing the brain injuries that David Eby talks about. If we want to look at solutions, let's look at Duncan, the Village Project, which I've had to fight over and over again to make sure that BC Housing continues their funding of this. You have people getting housed who have been homeless. You have people getting services who have been using substances. You have people getting employment opportunities and people moving back into lives with dignity and agency. There is a model that works. It's a lot less expensive than what's being proposed, and there's evidence to back it up. The challenge with involuntary care, as the evidence tells us, is we've got about a 3.5% in success rate. So government's spending a lot of money on approaches that evidence show us are going to fail. Is government spending money on things that aren't going to work? Let's spend it on things that work, like the Village Project that has been proven to be successful.
Thank you. Open debate now. The question was about public safety as well. John Rustad, your thoughts?
Public safety is a huge issue, and we'll deal with the free drug supply and the fact that government has become one of the largest drug dealers in this province. But when it comes to public safety, look, we have a problem with 20% of the people committing crimes are committing 80% of the crimes. There are no consequences. They're
right.
being rotated back out onto the street. This has to change in British Columbia. When you have every business in the province that's now having to have security guards come in because there is no consequences and criminals are being emboldened, that to me is wrong. That's why we're actually going to push not just for bail reform, we're going to be pushing for court reform in terms of being able to get these people through the court system much faster. And we're going to be pushing for guaranteed minimum sentencing.
David
These
Eby.
people need to be taken off our streets.
Well,
David Eby.
John will find no disagreement from me about repeat offenders. There are people.
Then
who
why
do
haven't you done
this
anything
and they
about
need to be
it?
in custody. But where you will find some disagreement with me and where he faced a serious credibility problem was his response to a journalist question last week about gun control. Journalist said, are you going to enforce, you're going to make sure that British Columbia enforces federal gun rules restricting handguns and semi-automatic
Wow,
rifles?
this is so
And John said, no,
out of
I'm going to
context.
direct police not to put any resources into enforcing federal gun control rules. Well, that doesn't make our community safe. It has nothing to do with hunting. It is all about pandering to a small constituency, which is so small, I think is invisible in order to, and it makes our communities less safe.
Okay, John Russ,
What do you say to
Thank
people
you.
in Surrey
So
or in
you want to
Richmond
talk to
about semi-automatic guns and handguns and directing the police not to enforce those rules?
You want to talk about gun control?
Yes, I do.
Here's a big issue. David Eby is refusing to even put any forces, any police
Nails it right here,
efforts towards
David.
actually stopping guns from coming into illegal guns from coming into this province through our ports. We propose to put out a police force that is going to be focused on the criminal activities, that potential criminal activities that are happening at our ports. And their response
John,
was,
what
that's
rules-
federal.
what rules
That's a
are they gonna
federal issue. We're not
enforce?
going to worry about that. I'm sorry. That's a provincial issue. When these guns and drugs and organized crime is happening in our streets and happening in these communities, we need to do everything we can to lock down on that, which is why we would put a force in place to deal with it.
To the point that he made to you, though, would you enforce federal gun restrictions?
So look, there are law-abiding gun owners in this province that are being targeted by the federal government, and I disagree with that. And so I will not see our precious dollars that are being spent on law enforcement going after law-abiding guns. Instead, I will have them going after the criminals, going after the gangs, going after the source of these guns coming into our province.
Okay, Sonia, first to know.
He will see our precious dollars going to all sorts of for-profit industries that can't actually deliver what they want to, what we should be succeeding. The focus here is
God
so
forbid
much
anybody
on
makes some profit.
The worst end of the crisis.
It's evil.
And we hear
Those
so
evil
little
capitalists,
from
right?
Both of these leaders is how we're going to prevent these crises from getting worse, how we're going to move upstream to respond to the cuts that came under the BC Liberals that have now created these deepening poverty and inequality in our province, to respond to the fact that much of what's happened especially the last 4 years has been a continuation of the status quo. We actually should be trying to prevent the lack of mental health access for young people. If we want young people to have better mental health, let's get counselors in schools. Let's make sure we have psychologists in schools.
Quick response.
Yeah, prevention.
There's no question in my mind that we need to be expanding mental health services. We need to have mental health clinics and services expanded, especially throughout rural BC.
Under MSP?
We need to make sure, quite frankly, that we build out everything from doctor-prescribed treatment to short-term treatment and recovery to longer-term recovery. There's more that needs to be done around making sure that we're treating people with addictions as well as with mental health issues.
Final comment for David Eby. We've put in a final break here. Go ahead.
I just find it astonishing that someone who says that public safety is a priority would take that vital tool away from police to enforce federal gun regulations against,
or that vital
gangsters in
tool
the
away from
province.
citizens.
Police are lining up to say it's an
Not about
absurd
gangsters.
proposal.
He wants to
It
go
is
after
handguns, John. Are you hunting
legal-
deer with handguns?
He
with
wants to go
semi-automatic
after
rifles?
legal
This isn't
gun
about hunting.
owners. We
This
want to
isn't
go
about
after
legal gun.
criminals
This is
and
about a
crime, which
tool.
is what, quite frankly, the
John,
guy who
I know
wrote
why
the
you don't
book
want-
on how to
I
sue
know
the
why you
police
don't want to let me
doesn't
talk.
want to do it.
I
Just
let
for
you
the,
talk.
for the listeners, so you don't talk over each other. Just finish your.
I let you talk.
thought, please.
Police are lining up to say it is absurd that you would take that tool away from them that they use to enforce the law against gangsters
John
or
Rustad, go
trafficking
ahead.
guns.
So look, we have a premier who actually wrote the book entitled How to Sue the Police. You cannot take his advice on how to tackle crime. We're going to go after the gangs.
No
We're
shit.
going to go after the guns. We're going to go after the source. We're going to make sure that our ports are no longer sieves for this stuff coming into
Despite
British
all
Columbia.
announcements to the contrary, John.
Thank you, leaders. We fit in one final short break, and then we will come back with more. This is the BC Leaders Radio Debate on 980 CKNW.
Okay, that was great.
That is great. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
I should see if I can get that. I would be interested in reading that.
Yeah, I'd like to
It would
have
be
a look at
it would be
that
good
book.
reading for the Coots guys. I should
Oh,
send them a
absolutely.
copy.
Absolutely. So I wanted to share this because this gets in, because I was talking about this morning in my video. This is the I think this is Global News' coverage of John Rustad, and then I'll show you what he actually said. Let me pop this up on the screen. So this is Global News' footage.
The provincial NDP is raising concerns about the Conservative leader's commitment to enforcing national gun regulations.
From my perspective, I think that's an overreach by government, and so I will not have any provincial resources being spent on their initiative.
John Rustad was commenting on changes to firearms laws brought in last year. They put new restrictions on handguns and place new restrictions on
The stock footage.
The stock footage is the best.
with its own resources, including border guards, but it wouldn't be a priority for provincial.
Look at
that. I have family.
Oh, I can't get any more propagandistic than that. It's so funny. Seriously, the firearms law, Bill C-21, is going after law-abiding citizens.
The only thing it's missing is like the Confederate flag, air deodorant, car freshener.
No, it's serious though. Like none of this is
So
is it you would be
those look like pictures from like a Texas gun show. I mean, what is it? What is this?
Get out of here. It's so here's the thing. Like all of the things depicted in this video were already illegal. They're already massively illegal in British Columbia. The new laws don't change any of that. The new laws don't make sawed-off shotguns and giving people handguns in a paper bag in a car.
So ridiculous.
None of that was on the table. But if all you ever did was watch Global News, that's what you would have to think about that. But here's the thing. They're going after legally acquired firearms. They're reclassifying a ton of firearms to be illegal. They ban handguns in that bill. They ban it all outright. You can't buy or sell handguns, period. The Buttmaster is illegal. It was in the amendment to Bill C-21. And this is the thing. This isn't just John Rustad's opinion. This is what Danielle Smith said. They're not going to allow the RCMP. They're not gonna allow the federal government to use British Columbia taxpayers' resources to go after British Columbia taxpayers' property. And this is what he's saying in this other clip here.
Regarding your party's position on federal gun laws, you said at a meet and greet in Fort St. John on August 12th, quote, "You will instruct police not to enforce those laws," end quote. I would assume you were talking about Bill C-21, but can you just elaborate on what you meant and where your party stands when it comes to federal gun laws?
So I think the gun laws that have been brought in by the federal government looking to take away and to seize guns from law-abiding citizens in British Columbia, I think is the wrong approach, especially when you're out in rural BC and with people that are there. So from my perspective, I think that's an overreach by government, and so I will not have any provincial resources being spent on their initiative. If they want to go ahead, fill their boots, but that's not something that, from a province's perspective, we would spend any resources doing.
Perfectly reasonable reply to that. But of course, the outrage. I'm gravely concerned. Judd Rustad is saying he will direct the police to ignore federal gun laws in British Columbia. He's playing politics with public safety.
The paper bag.
Paper bag guns. Like,
oh man, that made my day.
It's so funny. It's silly. It's silly is what it is. So that's where we're at with that anyway. I guess we can continue with the debate unless you got anything else to add to that.
No. Let's keep it going. Yeah. This is great.
All right, welcome back to the BC Leaders Radio Debate on 980 CKNW. We move on to Indigenous relations now, and to John Rustad, the Conservative leader. You have suggested that you would repeal Indigenous rights laws in British Columbia, notably the UN Declaration passed unanimously by the BC legislature. If it was so bad for BC, why did you vote for it to become law in BC? 1 minute.
So what British Columbia needs in this province is economic reconciliation. What is currently happening is actually causing friction between people. We need to make sure that we are focused on having First Nations engaged in the economy to their fullest extent. Dr. Joseph Gosnell had a vision when he was the father of the Nisga'a Treaty, and I think it should be applied across the province, which is it's high time that First Nations have the opportunity to not only catch up economically, but if possible, surpass. And you do that by adding to the economy, not by taking from one group to give to another. And it's a big piece that we need to be doing in this province. We also need to be returning children to First Nations, having First Nations community in charge of actually doing their own children and youth care around that. And we need to be working with First Nations on addictions and addiction treatment and building out capacity there. So these are the things that we need to do. And what we will continue to use UNDRIP as it was intended, as it was debated in the United Nations as a guiding principle for our work with First Nations. However, when we have legislation that is creating problems, we will remove it and we'll make sure that legislation is put in place that actually works for all British Columbians.
Open debate now, David Eby.
Well, for British Columbians, they understand that dividing ourselves and finding wedges between communities doesn't make us more prosperous, doesn't make communities more successful. Some of the biggest and most successful projects in our province, economic projects that are creating jobs across all communities, are partnerships with Indigenous people. And to take this moment to announce actually on Truth and Reconciliation Day that, John, that you would repeal a law that just recognizes the rights that Indigenous people have. It sets us back to the approach they used to take when you were in government, when you were a minister, when you lost the biggest
35 agreements.
When you lost the biggest land claim case in the history of Canada with the Chilcotin, a 10-year court battle. It
court
threw
battle that
uncertainty.
started under the NDP in the 90s.
Uncertainty. John, just let me finish. Threw uncertainty into the land base. And then at the end of spending all that money on lawyers and fighting them all the way through, the court still says you have to sit down and figure things out with them. We're still cleaning up your mess from that. And so working with Indigenous people, we've got equity programs to support them in participating in projects on the land base, finding ways for communities to work together. We have to do things differently. And that will bring success for our province.
Sonia, first to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think David brings up a really important point that John wants to ignore, which is that the courts have been incredibly clear with governments, which is you need to sort out the fact that rights and title exists. And that if you're not going to sort it out, you're going to lose in court again and again as a government. If you're fighting against the inherent rights and titles that the courts have declared are there, you're going to spend a lot of taxpayer money to go into court and fight a battle that you're going to lose. Instead, the approach has to be negotiating at a table, working with First Nations, recognizing that rights and title have been declared by the courts, and moving forward in a mature and responsible way, not just in terms of the work with First Nations, but on behalf of the people of BC and on behalf of businesses. There is no greater uncertainty that can be wrought than what happens in this province when these two parties switch back and forth. One comes in, they do a whole bunch of things. The other one comes in, undoes it all, starts again. And business and the people of BC have nothing but uncertainty, election after election, because
all I would like to do is rewrite the entire electrical grid.
Long-term thinking, consistency, and when it comes to reconciliation, Indigenous rights, the courts have made it abundantly clear.
Quick reply from John Russ.
Thank you for that. There's a reason I signed 435 agreements in BC, because I believe very strongly in reconciliation. I believe very strongly in Indigenous rights, which includes title. We need to work through and actually address that, and we do that through economic reconciliation. But very quickly,
so paternalistic, she says under her breath.
Was he going for a burn? What was that?
Propose that you decide to shelf and not do until after the election.
Communist gobbledygook.
I mean, this is classic. I never know which John Rustad I'm dealing with. So when we did the Haida agreement, he looked into the eyes of the Haida elders.
What did he say?
I don't know. You gotta rewind that.
John.
Oh,
come on, man.
It's too.
He looked in the eyes of the elders. You don't want to hear this story because you know it's embarrassing. It looked in the
economic reconciliation. But very quickly, I would just ask David Eby, what is it that was about the Lands Act change last spring that you proposed that you decided to shelf and not do until after the election?
Oh,
David Eby.
I mean, this is classic. I never know which John Rustad I'm dealing with. So when we did the HIDA agreement,
from it again, are we,
he looked
David?
into the eyes of the HIDA
Oh, hiding
elders
from it
through the
again.
Hiding from the
legislature.
question again.
John, you asked me a question.
Yes, the Lands Act.
John, so come on, man. So
Answer the
looked in
question,
the
go ahead.
eyes of the elders. You don't want to hear this story because you know it's embarrassing. You looked in the eyes of the elders and you said this is important. Government can't win a court case against the HIDA. I'm glad this happened. And then you walked out of the legislature and started tweeting about how the HIDA were coming for people's backyards. And it's exactly the same approach that caused fear and confusion about the Land Act, and it was causing disruption. And so we pulled it because it wasn't working. We're not going to bring it back. We're going to make sure that we're addressing concerns and working together, Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, to solve problems. But your approach to use social media to say one thing to the elders, look in their eyes and say, yeah, you could win in court,
Completely false.
and then
So
go
first of
out
all-
and try to
first of
stir
all,
up fears
David
on
Eby
social
said he was
media.
going to get the Lands Act done by the end of April, and then he said, "No, we're going to pull it. We'll do it after the election." When it comes
That's
to HIDA,
not-
I
that's not
fully
true,
support HIDA. That's what your own words are in the legislature. Okay,
That's what my
When-
words are right here.
when it comes to HIDA, I fully support HIDA title, but title should never have been identified underneath private land and infrastructure. That creates
Okay.
too much of a
So-
conflict that cannot
wow.
happen.
Very quickly, Sonia, first now.
Yeah, fomenting fear and misinformation is something that John and the Conservatives want to do in this election and pit people against each other. What we want is responsible governance that is straightforward, that is working with evidence and information, that is consistent on where they stand, that they don't say one thing and do the other or say different things on different days. We need
Okay.
responsible, forward-looking governance that recognizes where we are in terms of our legal responsibilities and our responsibilities around reconciliation. And John is all
you.
over the place.
Thank you, leaders. We move on to a new question.
Okay, before we move on to a new question, I kind of want to use this as a segue because we're going to be talking about this on Friday night. So we don't really have to dive into the native question too much tonight because we're going to be getting into this. So I have actually scheduled with me is Alex Zoltan on Friday and Jim McMurtry. You may have heard of
I
him.
couldn't possibly be less qualified to talk about this, so I'm pretty excited.
We're gonna get into it, but someone who is quite qualified himself is Jim McMurtry. There he is with his orange shirt. He got criticized the "Where's the Bodies" shirt. So we'll see.
It's kind of a weird shirt to pick as your donut shirt, but you know, who am I?
Yeah, I guess. But Jim McMurtry who knows more about the subject than probably anyone else that I know. So we're gonna be talking about this whole stuff on that evening. So tune in for that. I think we should have a real good time, and that's this Friday evening at 6:30, and we will be sharp this time.
No, sorry
be on
about
time.
Yeah, my
No,
apologies.
it's all good. Yeah, 6:30 Pacific time for anyone who's over on the other parts of Canada that actually decide elections. It'll be 9:30 Eastern time. That's where we'll be. So yeah, we'll just continue with this from where it's at.
This is to David Eby on the negative nature of the campaign that we've seen so far in this election. You've portrayed your opponent, John Rustad, as extreme and dangerous for his comments on vaccines and climate change. This has come up during the debate this morning already. Why should voters care about those comments when there are very many other pressing issues here in this campaign? Your thoughts?
Well, thanks, Mike. Let's take healthcare. Just one thing. People want their hospitals to work well. They want their healthcare system to work well. John's bringing people to this election, like Chris Sankey. He won't even condemn Chris Sankey saying that the COVID vaccine causes AIDS. Like, when you can't even bring yourself to say that that's problematic, and you don't agree with that, then how are you going to run a healthcare system? I wouldn't trust John Rustad to run my Thanksgiving dinner conversation or with the family, let alone a hospital where my kids have to be safe, where parents and grandparents have to be safe. I mean, this is like incredibly bizarre, and bizarre in a way that compromises safety. To say you're not going to enforce federal handgun rules because actually I struggle to know why. And so, it makes our communities less safe in terms of a crime and public safety perspective. It makes our communities less safe in terms of how our healthcare system is run. Will Mr. Sankey be the health minister? Will he be on a health committee? And does John actually fundamentally, at the end of the day, agree with Mr. Sankey's views?
Open debate, John Rustad. Go ahead.
I like how he attacks Indigenous Canada, but you asked the question about the negative
whoa,
nature.
John. Whoa,
Wow.
wow.
Please, I'm
What
speaking,
about Mr.
Mr. Eby.
Sankey's
Will you allow
views?
me to speak, please? Thank you. Look, the reality is this. People are dying on our streets from drugs. People are dying on our streets from crime. Our healthcare system is in collapsing and in crisis. People are having an affordability crisis. Our economy is in shambles. Our resource sector is being destroyed. We've got a budget problem. We have so many issues that need to be debated. And David Eby only wants to go negative. And I get that, because he can't defend his record. He can't defend what he's doing. He cannot defend it. So that's what a weak leader does, is they just go on. That's that.
Well, these two are battling it out. I think what British Columbians want out of this election is a vision for the future of this province. And we've put forward a very serious vision, a vision that looks at how do we measure government in an effective way that ensures that government is delivering the services that people should rely on to keep people healthy, to keep communities healthy, to keep our natural world healthy, and to make sure that our government is capable.
Hippy dippy, what?
One of the things that I think people are so disappointed with is we've had all
Lady, you've never even delivered a ham
100 million
sandwich.
here, 200 million there, $1 billion here, and we're not seeing the
Who the fuck
outcomes
are
that
you?
we should expect
Excuse
from
me.
government. And so David does have a responsibility to acknowledge and recognize the frustration that people feel and how deep that is.
Why are you even
It's
here?
so deep that they're turning to somebody that is using Twitter and conspiracy theorists to guide them in their decision and policy making. This is a very worrisome place for British Columbia.
Okay.
I'd say at this point,
What
don't
about the
be bothered
Malthusian
either of
conspiracy
them.
theory that
Make
the world's
legislature a place
overpopulated?
where people have to sit down at the table, work together, and focus on the people of British Columbia.
David Eby.
Well, there's lots that I agree with Sonia about. People are.
Isn't that outside your place? Are you being?
Yeah, sorry, I'm in the ghetto out here, so in the ghetto.
The ghetto that the NDP created.
That's
frustrated
right.
out there, and rightly
I
so.
am in an
They're
NDP
facing
riding,
huge cost of
provincially
living
and
pressures.
federally. So,
And these challenges that we face, they're really hard problems. And we're just starting to turn the corner. Rents are just starting to come down in British Columbia while they're going up in the rest of Canada, because we're building 4 times more rental housing than Ontario. Now's not the time to stop. For John Rustad to say government doesn't have a role to play in delivering affordable housing, that's fundamentally wrong. It's challenges like this that drive me. This is why I'm doing this work, is to make sure that British Columbians get support on these big challenges. John wants to leave people on there. He wants to cut healthcare. He wants to abandon the field on affordable housing, turn people over to speculators.
This is
the
a reply. Go ahead, John Rustad.
I think British Columbia doesn't want a premier who's so easily to lie, and I think that is just bad. I hate using that word, but it's very true.
Everybody
talks about those
climate
comments.
scientists.
But I'll tell you this: what
Bonnie
we are
Henry,
focused
let
on,
him respond.
vaccine
what
makers.
we are focused on is making sure that life can be affordable. We're focused.
Wait a second,
on
vaccine
creating
makers and Bonnie
conversations,
Henry
just getting
did
back to
lie.
Basics of looking after people. David Eby seems to think that $3,700 a month downtown Vancouver for a 2-bedroom apartment is affordable. It's not. This is why we put in the Rustad rebate, to be able to help with rent
To drive
and with mortgages.
property prices
And
up.
it's also why we're doing everything we can to reduce those cost
How's it
structures
gonna
and
drive
be positive for
property
people in
prices
BC.
So we have 30 seconds left in the debate. Sonia, first to now. You get the last word here. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, again, we have to look at what are the conditions that got us here.
Why are they
40
giving
years
her the
ago,
last word?
Government started saying, "Hey, you're on your own." We adopted this very neoliberal approach to things. What we need are governments that can effectively deliver services that people rely on, make sure that those foundations are there so that businesses can have certainty, so that people can have certainty, so that we can thrive. And that's investments in the services that government should be delivering. That's what we are focused on.
That brings our debate to an end. And I want to thank the 3-party leaders for doing this today. NDP leader David Eby, Conservative leader John Rustad, Green leader Sonia Furstenau, for a vigorous and informative debate. Thank you very much to all 3 of you for being here today. If we can end on a high note, I'm sure you'd all agree on one thing. We disagreed on a lot, but I think we can all agree. Make sure you register and vote on or before October 19th. Right? We all agree on that.
Mike,
I knew
Right
you
on,
would
Mike.
agree
Yes.
on that.
Thank you for having us on.
100%.
Thank you to all 3 of you.
wow.
Register to vote. Yeah, that's absolutely what we should be doing. If anybody's leaving on a high note, it's a high percentage of British Columbians. That's absolutely correct. And we need to get them clean.
It was an interesting equity decision for the moderator to give the most irrelevant person in the room the last word in that debate. I thought that was interesting. I mean,
Well, it's kind of courteous to those people that, you know, just want to get out of the theater in time. You know, it's just like, when the movie's just about done, you know, the credits are coming and you're the
Yeah.
first one out of the seat and you're getting out, so you don't have to wait to get out of the place. That was the ploy there. I'll give it to her, and that's it. Man.
It was a nice
do you-
contrast from the civility of yesterday's vice presidential debate, right? Where they were unfailingly polite to each other. There was none of that here, right? It was starting to get a little spicy there, but nothing like that with comments. But
I only caught clips from that debate. Were they really polite to each other?
oh yeah, they were like unfailingly polite.
Oh wow, unbelievable. That doesn't sound like the norm anymore for American politics.
No, some people have called it the greatest debate of all time, and yeah.
Oh, come on. That can't be.
No, people have called it that just on account of its level of civility, uncharacteristic level of civility in these.
So I found with this debate that it was everybody talking over John Rustad. I think that the moderator didn't jump in enough and say, hey, just let him finish what he has to say.
Yeah, you know, shut up, lady. You're lucky you're even here.
Yeah, like that. but it was the talk over John hour, in my opinion, that because clearly it was set up that everybody's fighting against John. Why? Because John Rustad and his party have gone from relative obscurity to contenders to win this election. That's where it's gone. So yeah, they're nervous. The Greens, I mean, there's nothing to be nervous about. You're not going to win. I mean, just like you just be happy that you got to sit on the stage, kind of thing.
She has won the last two.
She won her riding.
Yeah,
I mean, oh yeah, of course,
not by a large margin, but yeah,
right. But at the end of the day, really, this is a contention between the NDP and the Conservatives, and I still think that her being there was just to bring that illusion that everybody's disagrees with John. So anybody who might be listening in goes, wow, more people disagree with that guy than agree with him. I don't know, even though a lot of the stuff he's saying makes sense.
But I mean, Clyde, we're in BC, right? So you and I may be of one political persuasion, but you know, a lot of people in this province aren't of that same political persuasion. I think that might actually be a fair representation of the population of BC. I mean, you think about how many people live on Vancouver Island, you know, the Kootenays. There's a lot of kooks out there as well.
Yeah. I've been to Nelson.
Yeah. So, you know, never underestimate how many kooky people, you know, hippies and socialists and all those types are in this province, right?
Yeah, fair enough. That is quite true. But overall, who do you think?
We try to avoid them in our day-to-day lives, right? Just pretend like they don't exist, but they do.
You try to avoid them, avoid being downwind of them as well.
Yeah.
But overall, performance
obviously aren't so bad once you talk to them, and you know.
Obviously, so the leader of the Greens, a lot of just platitudes, a lot of just, you know, stuff Green people say. That's fine. When it comes to David Eby, I found him to just be talking over John as much as possible, with this October surprise of like, here's a piece of paper. COVID gives, or the vax gives you AIDS. I don't know what that was about. It's not even John's opinion.
And it gets some interesting parallels to the American election, just in terms of kind of running against your own record, right? Like things are really, really terrible out there, and it's high time somebody did something about it. But like, you're the incumbent.
Right. So, it's high time. It's high
kind
time.
Of a baffling experience to watch somebody try to sell you that pitch, right?
Yeah, it's really strange. And then to go after some, I don't know, somebody in John Rustad, or sorry, somebody in the Conservatives, which I'm guessing Eby doesn't know how elections work. Like you have to vote in the leader, so it's the constituents of that votes in the leader of the Conservatives. It's not up to John Rustad who gets voted into those areas. And That's it. So David Eby can just like go suck on a lemon, I guess.
Yeah.
He wants to attribute anything that sounds crazy to John Rustad, because that's the thing that's been classically working. During the pandemic, that was their go-to. Anybody who doesn't agree with the narrative is a kook, is a crazy, is you're unacceptable fringe minority with weird thoughts and unacceptable views. Like that's really what he's reaching for. And I think people are done with it. People are done with hearing that.
I think a lot of people are, but I think it'll still sell pretty good in BC. We have a lot of people that, the Reddit types, the far left. We have a lot of them, especially in Vancouver and Victoria, the major city centers. So see, sometimes it's easy to underestimate them.
So, and that's where the votes are looking. So like if I go to 338 Canada right now, just pull this up. So 338 Canada shows if you go down to BC provincial politics, we got that's federal projection. Sorry, let's go to.
That'll be the one just below it, I think. Yep, is the 338 provincial projections.
Where are we?
That map there.
Oh yeah, just below it. Okay, it's opening it up in a new tab. Here we go. So provincial one comes up. So the popular vote projection is showing that John Rustad is 46% of the vote, as opposed to the 44%. So
that's about as close as you can get, right? I mean, they're both within the margin of error in terms of the popular vote projection.
Now that's up 47% from where they were, and the NDP are down 45% from where they were. So they're now that people are starting to wake up to the election and the electoral process again, because it's actually an official election time, you might see more movement in this, because people are going to look at it and go, where's it going? What's happening? What's going on with politics now?
What's really interesting actually about the seat projections, you need 47 for a majority, and it looks as though the Green Party could be the balance of power, because it looks like the NDP are projected to have 45 seats. The Green could have 1 or 2. So, yeah.
Oh, so the data's changed since this morning. So I was looking at this morning, and the odds of winning the most seats were actually lower for the Conservatives this morning.
Yeah, so I guess
it's actually come up. So maybe because of this debate, perhaps. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of government dissatisfaction in BC, so I wouldn't surprise me at all if the Green Party, again, you have a lot of the never conservative type people, right, that you have to account for. So I think that a lot of those people are going to vote Green, and that'll cannibalize a lot of the seats for the NDP.
So odds of winning most seats, obviously Green is sitting at less than 1%. A tie beat them at 4%.
I mean, I question a little bit even just the marketing decision on the part of the party to go as the Conservative Party of BC. Just British Columbians, not a lot of them identify as conservatives. I know you and I do, but we just I personally think of conservatism as just progressivism under the speed limit. But a lot of other people in BC, they are of that never conservative persuasion, right? So I think this is going to be closer than people think.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I think it will be close. And this is why I've been encouraging people, especially people in British Columbia that watch this channel, to go out, make sure you're registered to vote, get out there, because you can't just show up on the day and expect your name to be in your riding and all set up. Get on that website today, get signed up. You don't have to make any phone calls. It's very quick. Just get on the website, put your details in, and bam, you're registered to vote. That's it. That's all it takes. It really is that simple. Because as far as I know, we still do have normal elections where you have to show ID and make sure you're at the place where you're supposed to vote. That's usually how it works here in Canada. Hopefully it remains that way.
Did you see Jimmy Carter's endorsement of Kamala Harris today?
Oh, really? They dragged that guy out of a nursing home for that?
Yeah, you should check out the videos. They're pretty ridiculous.
Oh,
It's way worse than Biden. It's totally like Weekend at Bernie's.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's video of it?
Oh yeah, it's
Okay,
very
now
cool.
we gotta see it. Now we gotta see it. Jimmy Carter.
Dude, I swear it's like a Mandela effect thing. I thought that he had passed away like last April. I was 99% sure. Like I had already gone through a whole grieving process over it. I actually kind of like Jimmy Carter.
He went through a crazy-
Yeah,
I
so-
totally love the cafe standards that led to bigger.
He was trending on Twitter like 12 months ago. I think that's when they put him in hospice care originally. So I just assumed that he died. And I was posting about it and everything. So when they wheeled him out today, I was really, really quite shocked that he was even alive.
Okay, I got it here. Yeah, Jimmy Carter is very excited to vote for Kamala Harris. Okay, oh, he's having found the right video now. That's not the one. That's not the one. Oh, hold on. I'll
It's
find
not
it.
even far off from the real thing, Clyde.
Okay. Oh no, that's the real video.
Yeah.
Holy cow! I didn't think that was real. Holy cow! I really okay. Well, let's show it. What? I didn't think this was real.
Yeah, his grandson
Former
says
President
he's
Jimmy
really
Carter
excited.
celebrated his 100th birthday yesterday in Plains, Georgia. Carter was not looking forward to his Carter was not looking forward to his birthday, according to his son, but instead is looking forward to voting for Kamala Harris. Carter's son claims his father wants to stay alive because he's just so excited to cast a vote for Kamala Harris, who received no votes in the Democratic primary. He said he didn't care about that. He's just a birthday. He said he cared about voting for Kamala Harris, Carter's son said, according to the Washington Post. And here's the video of the event. Really? That's them. There he is, giving his endorsement.
I've never seen a more enthusiastic endorsement for a presidential candidate in my life.
Oh man, what? What? No way.
I feel bad.
Oh, that's
actually kinda like Jimmy
terrible.
Carter. I don't know. I know a lot of people don't like him.
Oh, what?
He's
No.
He's kind of folksy. He's kind of, I don't know.
Okay, I gotta put that away. That's that's awful. That's
I know.
awful. Really, to pull that one out.
I know. I retweeted it and I was like, I'm just here for the breadsticks.
Oh no.
Oh,
Oh, that's absolutely brutal. Anyway, so that was the debate. That was the first debate. Do you want to do this again for the next debate? Or there's one in a couple of days. Chat, would you like to see this again? Because I think this would be a lot of fun.
yeah, it'd be great if Kat could join us again. And you know who else we should get to join us if he's available is Wyatt.
Oh, Wyatt. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He's not a British Columbian, but he has been here and he's been doing a lot of the door-to-door.
Yeah,
like,
he's been
actually
door knocking.
yeah, doing all that stuff.
Speaking of which, I have a little update on our Jagmeet Singh constituency office story. If you
Nice.
Yeah, just for a quick second here. So I called one of my adjacent ridings and I asked them if this was normal, and they called me back. It's Mark Dalton's office, and I told them that it's only open for 14 hours a week. Jagmeet Singh's office. I was like, I don't even live in your riding, Mr. Dalton.
Wait, Mr. Dalton, is he another NDP?
No, he's a conservative MP.
And he answered the phone.
Actually, it was his chief of staff, technically. So his chief of staff, called me after I left a voicemail. And, I told him what was going on with Jagmeet Singh's office. He goes, this is very unusual.
Is it?
He's like, this is very amusing.
It's unusually amusing. That's amazing.
It's like, if you can ever get in there, like, can you call me back and update me? Like, I'm really intrigued by
Yeah,
it.
you got to keep trying.
Yeah,
you got to keep trying, because last quarter, $143,000 went to just for the operations of that office.
Yeah, so they do a lot of expenditures for advertising, which I find odd. Like, why? I don't know. It's a strange. I don't know what they're spending the money on exactly. He pays his staffers twice as much as Polyev does.
Yeah, because he doesn't have to open up the doors. And
yeah, and they just don't do anything.
But is it one of those like socialist tricks where, you know, they confuse like wealth and income? Like we pay them twice as much per hour, but they work 2 hours a week, you know?
Well, it's the weirdest thing. They have these opening hours, but it's not open. It just has a phone number on the door that says, call us for an appointment. And then you call and nobody answers the phone. So I wonder if you go there when it's not open, if it'll be open, if it's some kind of socialist bizarro world, right? Where up is down and down is up. Like open means closed. Well, I mean, this is what I was talking to the Dalton guy about. I said, what do the opening hours mean, sir? If the door is not open, what is the difference? Why would I go there between Tuesday between 10 and 5 versus any other hour? The outcome is going to be the same.
No kidding.
What do the hours mean?
Well, they mean nothing. Absolutely mean nothing. So when is the next debate?
Seinfeld. It's a constituency office that means nothing. A show that means nothing.
So I got to find this out. BC. Did you say it was on the 8th?
Yeah, I believe it's on the 8th. So today's the 2nd. So
of course, there's takeaways from other people on other things. So it is on the 8th.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we'll try to make that happen. Also schedule on the 8th. We'll figure out how we can get that. What day is the 8th?
I think it's a Tuesday.
A Tuesday? Okay, well, we'll make that happen.
Yeah.
And we'll try to get Wyatt and Kat back for that. Yeah. And I think that will be a lot of fun. We got a super chat from UG Tai, $5. We all know UG. I'm looking forward to the next debate if you guys are together. We will be. It looks like that will be the thing. UG Tai also very helpful around here. And in fact, this is a perfect time for a plug because, well, what do we do here every morning? Every morning I'm sipping on a coffee. And of course, we can all enjoy some coffee together because we've launched the Clyde Brew Something brand. And this is actually coffee roasted right down in Vancouver by UG Tai himself. He's my personal roaster for the brand here. So if you order coffee through this, there's medium, dark, and decaf available. All very delicious. You can get it ground or beans, however you like it, however you like to make your coffee, whether you put it through percolator, espresso machine. I use the AeroPress. It's amazing. I'm going to make some videos about it and about the process of actually making this stuff. I got my hands in this coffee. This is great. This isn't some drop ship stuff. This is actually supporting a local business here in British Columbia. This is supporting the channel. And why not have a cup of joe out of the whole thing? It's great. Get on over there. It's ClydeDoSomething.com. The link is always in the description down below, but get on over there. Grab yourself a cup as well, just like this one. And you can be sipping on the Clyde Do Something mug. And that's the way we do it. I do decaf so I can have some in the evenings as well. That's the way to go. I'm just a coffee hound. I drink it for the flavor, and it's some of the best tasting coffee I've ever experienced in my entire existence here on this planet. But yeah, enjoy that. Get on over there and get some of that. We got another super chat from Ravusades for $5. Says, have a webcam pointed at it from across the street. If you see anyone other than the cleaners, come or go. Yeah, you should almost set up like a game cam, you know, where you're like, I'm hunting NDPs who actually do work, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's actually a good suggestion.
Yes. It's kind of like when we observe animals in the wild, you know.
That's right. Do like a Planet Earth documentary kind of thing.
NDP Nux for Cup for $2 says, comment on Fergus shutting down Parliament. Well, I don't know much details about it. I'm going to be reading about it as soon as we get off here. Probably likely be doing a story about it in the morning. So look forward to that with your cup of joe in the morning. And join me for that. That's going to be.
I'm sure nobody's more relieved to hear that than Fergus himself. He's having a rough go.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, just getting a little beat up on all sides.
Oh, crazy.
Quite a lot of disrespect going on in the House of Commons. But I mean, he comes by it honestly.
Well, yeah,
He's a liberal.
yeah. But yeah, well, the House of Commons is what it is. It's a beast. Question period has never been my cup of tea. I can take it in spurts, in like
It's
doses.
been great lately.
It's been great.
Oh yeah,
You dive right into it. You love it.
It's the best.
It's this passive aggressive thing that I can't do. I can't handle
I
it.
live for it. It's like for a chaos addict. Oh man, last few days, like my hands have been shaking. Like overdosing on the chaos. I love it, dude. I absolutely love it.
Oh really? I'm glad I'm at work pulling wrenches while that's all going down. I catch all the clips.
Yeah, I mean, Trudeau, Mr. Speaker, he says my food program isn't real. Pierre Poilievre is just so funny, right? It's like, well, yeah, Mr. Speaker, it's a food program that doesn't deliver any food. Not a single ham sandwich, not a piece of broccoli.
Nothing, eh?
Nothing. No, not a single bowl of Kraft dinner, Mr. Speaker.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
all
very
our
funny
money.
to watch.
All our money going to that. It's insane. We have one last thing here. Clyde, do you think that Trudeau and Jagmeet should be sent to the front lines to fight in the Israel versus
Actually, Anon, I was thinking about this because nothing brings people together quite like a common enemy. So I was like, if we can just send Justin Trudeau to the Middle East, maybe the Israelis and the Palestinians can find something that they agree on.
Oh, no.
It's kind of in a 4D chess kind of way. Maybe this is something the UN should consider. Send him in there, chief speaker.
Dirk saying it's true, Zoltan.
Yeah.
Rabbit Sadie's with another $5 super chat says, I have said that Jagmeet has 3 brain cells chasing each other at best. Fergus has less than that.
I don't think that's fair. I think Fergus is a hell of a lot smarter than Jagmeet's saying. I mean, it's a low bar, but we'll agree to disagree.
It's a low bar. Come at me, bro. Come at me, bro.
Right.
That's where we're at with that.
Fergus has some redeeming qualities. Like he's funny. He's not so bad.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I'm going to end this here. And I want to thank everybody for joining in tonight. This has been a slice. It's actually been quite an entertaining thing to do. So I'm looking forward to the next debate. I'm looking forward to, obviously the federal election when that does happen. We should make this a thing. Get in on this. When Marty gets back, he'll want to get in on that. That's absolutely for sure. Marty, of course, is out hunting right now. So unfortunately, tomorrow there won't be a Marty and Clyde episode, but you can look forward to that next week when I fill him in on all the stuff that's happened while he was out shooting at animals in the woods. So we can get into that. Thanks everybody for joining tonight. It looks like a huge turnout. I'm glad for that. It's fantastic. Over on Twitter as well. If you haven't already, go over to x.com. Was it x.com at Amazing Zoltan. Get over there. Give Alex a follow here. He's putting out tons of content every single day. If you're into laughing at the House of Parliament, House of Commons,
the House of Mockery is what I call it.
The House of Mockery.
Yes.
Holy cow! I need to put a segment together for you once a week where we just do the House of Mockery, like everything. You break it all down. That would be fun. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway,
the only problem is an overabundance of material.
There we go. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode. Make sure you tune in on Friday in the evening. We've got Alex as well as Jim McMurtry going to be joining. It's going to be a great discussion. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff, maybe getting into a little bit of heavy material. It could be fun. I think we'll have a great time and we'll enjoy that. So looking forward to that. We'll see you guys all in the next one. And as always, keep on trucking.